Ranger sold his wardrobe. The Lone Ranger sold his bad dog. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know, 'cause times change, I know.
On some days, he's more than humble. On some days, he's cold and mad, mad as hell. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, you say. On some days, he's more than humble. On some days, he's cold and mad, mad as hell. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, you say. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder, you say.
Where every day's a brand new episode. up, what up, what up? What up, what up, what up? What up, Tenacious Liege? What up, PETA? What up, Pharaoh? What up, Cosmic? What up, Kraken Pills? What up, Old Lobster? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up, Twitch in general? What up, YouTube? It's your boy. Oh, comedy's back, Cosmic. Comedy's back. Comedy is back. PETA, if I hear one more object heading toward Earth that we have no idea what it is story. Reliable analysis is that it's probably a comet. So there you go. When you hear one of them stories, you just go, oh, you mean the comet. And then you're good. I mean, it's often a thing, as you say, Old Lobster, it's there's always a thing where, like, you just gotta let people know sometimes. You just gotta let them know. Gotta let them know. What up, Ponder Monkey? Oh, what strange times we do live in. Speaking of, the fourth video in on tonight's stream, Pharaoh, you're gonna really love this one. Get the timer reset button ready and get it properly oiled. But before we do that, a couple of things. One, hey. All right. Oh, it's a butthole. Face the camera. Face the camera. Why do we even have a camera? Why do we defy ourselves when there's nowhere? It is indeed a butthole. What is this? Your audio is angry. Oh, you know why? Never mind. I didn't turn on desktop audio yet. Hi. The lies. The lies. What it is. What is it? Doing a thing.
Oh, everybody, look at my fancy butthole. I mean, everybody does look. It's pretty great, but don't need to brag. But it's okay. You can let Burr show off his fancy butthole. Maybe when he grow up to be a seal, he catch fish for you. That's why it's best animal. Okay. Oh, everybody, look at my fancy butthole.
True. True.
And now it's time to pop up number 6. Oh, that's a butthole.
There. All accounts have been settled. And we are back in business. Also, up there, all the way at the top. Why would I set off gibberish when you can set off gibberish? Oh, you did gibberish. Holy shit. We had a bunch of them go off and I didn't see them. Shush. I'm a professional streamer, Pineapple. You need one of these. Why didn't that work? Okay, that one's just broken. Again. For some reason. But this one. Well, this just don't want to work. Yay! Butthole worked. There's no rhyme, no reason to any of this. Tech support. Everybody loves tech support.
I'm mortality as home entertainment. This cannot be the future.
Bots in chat, like actual bots. Because there are permitted bots in chat. From, when did gibberish work? I mean, you being a bot would explain your antinatalism, so. And he's gone. I don't know why they're not working. I got nothing. It's a Twitch problem. All right, well, that was fun. Let's do content. Strange things are happening. New Kelly Bosch.
It ain't a feeling you can pin down. It ain't a memory you can rewind. But everybody knows what I mean. And some things are as they seem. No one's gonna try to get clean. Strange things are happening. And I don't know why. We keep on coming back. Every time. And we say we don't know why. We keep on coming back. Every time. And we say we don't know why.
It was a cough, technically. But apparently my coughs my coughs sound like sneezing.
It's not a law you can change, but everybody knows what I mean. And some things are as they seem. No one's gonna try to get clean. Strange things are happening. Ooh, and I don't know why we keep on coming back every time. And we say we don't know why. We keep on coming back every time. And we say we don't know why.
And that's what really irritates me about people like, fucking Anthony Fantano showing like terrible AI music and terrible AI videos just to like endorse his point. You know what I mean? Like, you can get creative with the AI. Shut the fuck up. Since Peter brought up something adjacent, before we get into the AI content, we're gonna do this. New video from Hank. No, we've watched terrible AI videos before, right? And we call it the way we see it. Remember, we fucking covered Anna, Indiana, back when Anna. Oh, I got you. Handpicked examples is always an issue I have with people on that side. When you show them something that's objectively good, well, you know the script. Yeah. Quick, before we get into it, the thing hasn't dropped yet, and I forgot to set up an exclamation point command. But if you're on PC, in the down there part, there is a clickable picture that will take you to Proton Pass, where you can get 50% off a year subscription. And I can actually show you what it looks like. It should take you to something that looks like this. Right? 50% off Proton Pass. There it is. And I'll just click the link. 50% off Proton Pass, which is $249 a month. You do have to get the whole year at once in order to get that, right? If you do it monthly, it's still $499 a month. In the pass, you can attach files, to a password, identity, or note in Proton Pass. You can use email aliases, like if you are signing up for something and you don't necessarily want to give your legit email, wink wink, nudge nudge, then using an alias, it'll forward to your Proton email. It's got its own two-factor authenticator, which you should be using a two-factor authenticator as a minimum. And why not this one? It's got password sharing, dark web monitoring, and you can also set up passkeys. All for $249 a month at 1 year for just under $30. 10 email aliases for the same inbox, absolutely. We are looking at expanding into the Proton Unlimited and seeing what we can do to get some price breaks on those, which could be cool. Access to additional stuff. If you happen to have, let's say you have yourself, you want to get the Proton Pass, and you have at least 2 other people, right, in your family, you can get the family plan to get multiple accounts at just under $60 a year or $4.99 a month. So that same not quite half price is 29%, but it gets you more accounts for just double the price. You know what I mean? You paying attention? So yeah, this is cool. I set up my Proton account earlier today. And in interest of full disclosure, like, what does this get your favorite streamer? Whatever you spend through that link, I get 30%. So that's a way that you can help support the channel and get yourself a product that members of the community, like Old Lobster, endorses. The Unlimited has access to a variety of different things, including the Lumo Plus. Currently I have the Lumo free here. If we do any Googling today, we're going to use Lumo, and we were a little unimpressed, I'm going to be honest, when it first dropped, but they've had a few months in order to improve it, and we'll take a look at what it does. Yeah. So yeah, that's my sales pitch. I'll probably make another one at some other point in time. But yeah, Proton, endorsed by Old Lobster. Oh yeah, Hank. All right, Hank, do the thing.
I'm having a hard time with something, and I know that I shouldn't be, but someone has leaked a video from the Pentagon. They literally recorded a screen on their phone. And
What up, Resuche? All are welcome. If anyone attempting to avoid all the mainstream news that you're being inundated with, you need a break in between your third stream of the day covering the same story, this is the best place to be, because we're going to talk about none of that.
And they leaked that, and now Congress thinks that they found UFOs.
I'm not jumped to the conclusion that I believe that there are aliens coming from another planet, but I'm open to that.
But is there specific evidence or footage or document that you think lends extreme credibility to what we're discussing today?
I would say this new video we're seeing today is exceptional evidence.
First of all, we just need to make a list of the weird things about this video. Let's watch the video real quick. I'm going to do the quick version of it. We're going to be seeing a thing that is traveling over the ocean, and then it gets hit by a missile, like a thing flies through it, and then it floats along with these pieces after it. And then we're going to zoom out, and we're going to show it. This is what it looks like zoomed out, where it's not actually focused in on it. And you can see in the zoomed out version, if you look at it hard enough, you can see little dots flashing every once in a while. It's a little bit of a microcosm of the whole situation. So if you ask somebody who knows about UFOs, they'll just tell you what this is. They're going to be pretty sure they know exactly what it is. And when I explain this to you, you're going to know exactly.
What up, Charm Chaos? Yes, on a lot of topics, but especially this one.
What it is. You're going to look at this video and you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's what it is. Well, maybe not. Look, I don't know who you are. I posted about this on TikTok, and the top comment is, the biggest red flag was them showing it. If the Pentagon saw this as a legitimate threat, they would have classified the wazoo out of it. Well, that's the thing about this. This should be classified. And I'm going to make the case for that as well. This should not have been leaked. The government should not be sharing this, because the United States government, if they're following what they're supposed to do, they should support the United States military, which in this case they are not doing. So I'm going to make a list of things that I have heard people say that are weird about this video. First, this thing is moving fast. Second, the missile didn't explode. Third, this thing bounces off the missile. What bounces in war? Nothing, right? So that's weird. Fourth, the thing breaks into pieces.
Lots of things bounce in war. Not usually intentionally, but yeah, bouncing is something that it does. What up, Tiny?
People are saying these are pieces of the missile. Some people are saying they are pieces of the thing. So we could just say that there are pieces and they fly in formation with the thing. Fifth, another weird thing I've heard is that all the pieces are identical. I've also heard like a sixth thing, it split the missile. People are saying nothing could split a Hellfire missile. I don't know what this means.
Are you aware of anything in the United States government arsenal that can split a Hellfire missile like this?
Did it split the missile though? Let's say it. It split the missile. So we're gonna go through these 6 points. I feel a little like a dick here because it is so embarrassing to one.
Be a dick, Hank. Embrace the dickishness. It is time for dickery, Hank. It is time for dickery.
One, take up Congress's time with this. And two, that this is a news story. And I know that it's a news story because I've seen it on like every news outlet. I've seen people talking about it and talking about how weird it is. And it's just not weird. And we can actually be helped out by our sponsor here, Ground News, and we can type out UAP Hellfire. The Hellfire is the kind of missile involved. And I can click on that and find, here's the House hearing shows video of Hellfire strike on orb as veterans detail.
That's how you do an ad read, right? Actually use the fucking thing real quick.
UAP encounters. This is from 5 days ago, mostly covered by the center, not very covered by the left, very covered by the right. We've got a very high factuality Oregonian. Was it a UFO? Video seems to show a US military strike on a glowing orb. And over here, we've got a low factuality one. Shocking video of US military drone firing a Hellfire missile at UFO, only to watch it.
I mean, I would argue even farther back, Tiny, but at the very least, What up, Ribbons?
Bounce harmlessly off over the coast.
Ribbons, if you use Canvas, Gemini Canvas, it's supposed to be good at coding. It's an update to Gemini. It's supposed to be free. Where'd you go? Tools, Canvas. There it is. So,
of Yemen. There's a lot of bouncing going on in this story. New released video of House UFO hearing appears to show a US missile striking and bouncing off orb. At least we got appears to show. Ground News is a tool that allows you to see how different people and organizations have reported on the same story and what different information and perspectives they have to offer. You could do this work on your own. It would just be a huge amount of work to do it on your own. They got a ton of features. They got local news, and all of this operates, I am very appreciative of this, on a system that doesn't break the news media ecosystem. Like if I want to go to any one of these stories and actually read it, if I find a headline that I like and a take that I think is accurate, or a source that I know is credible, I can click on it. It turns out that I don't particularly love any of these stories, but maybe if I want to see Federal Reserve cuts key rate by a quarter point and signals 2 more cuts this year, I would like to see that as covered by a bunch of different people, largely from the middle, where I do actually think that they can report on that kind of thing well. So you can give Ground News a try at ground.news/Hank Green, or there's this QR code that's been on the screen the whole time. If you sign up with that link, you're going to get 40% off the Vantage plan. Make sure you use that QR code or the link in the description when you sign up. And now, let's get back to our little video. So, in order to get our brains into a
fuck, I just realized I gotta put links in my descriptions of my videos when I upload them to YouTube for the promo in the Proton Pass. I like the alliteration of powered by Proton Pass. I think that's fun. I don't know anyone who uses Gemini for coding personally, not trying to knock it. It just seems everyone prefers Claude or GPT-5. Yeah, no, I get that. This is something I actually just found out about today. So I think it's a relatively recent upgrade. And of course, everybody wants you to use, And I forgot to do it there too. Hold on. Tech support, fix the stream, make it work as it should. Do-do-do. When there's nowhere else to run, is there room for one more son? What up, Chef? One more and hold on, and hold on, hold on. wanna stand up. I wanna let go. No, you don't. I wanna shine on in the hearts, and I wanna eat from the back of my broken hand. Another headache, another heartbreak. I'm so much older than I can take in my affection. Well, it comes. I need direction to perfection. No, help me out. Yeah. All right. That didn't take too long. Back to
space where we understand what this thing is kind of just by looking at it. First, you have to look at our number one claim here, that this thing is moving extraordinarily fast. One thing you'll notice is at the beginning of the video, this thing is simply moving in a straight line. It just goes in a straight line, and it looks like it's moving quite fast. Now, if the drone was stationary and the object was right above the ocean, then we would be able to tell with our eyes how fast this thing was going on. But that's not what's going on. The actual situation we have here is that this object is about halfway between the ocean and the drone, and that's about 3 miles up. And we can tell this because actually in the video, there's some numbers on the bottom of the screen, and when the laser that is on the drone is guiding to that, it's saying this is how far away this thing is. It's about 3 miles away from the drone, and then when the object moves and the laser is instead pointing at the ocean, you can see that the rangefinder now says that the ocean is around 6 miles away. What happens in situations like this is the object is moving.
fucking Hank doing science out here.
But if you're just looking at the object and there's something far away behind you and you're zoomed in on that object, like imagine just like looking through a rifle scope or looking through like a zoom lens, when you move it, things zoom by really fast. If you're tracking something that isn't as far away as the distance, that's going to look like the distance is moving really fast while you're tracking that thing. And making this worse, if you're moving in the opposite direction, it will move even faster. So you're adding to the appearance of speed by looking at the thing. Like just do this with your finger and see how fast the background moves, right? It's zooming by. And the more you move your body as you look at your finger, the more the background blurs and is going fast. So you can't really tell how fast an object is just by looking at it. And that's mostly what people are doing here, especially because all of the data is not in here because this wasn't officially released. I knocked over a cup. Why wasn't it released? I don't know. Because maybe the military thought that it should be secret that we're using Hellfire missiles to shoot things down in the air, which is not what they're designed for. Like nobody knew until this video came out that that was a thing that anyone was doing. And
a Hellfire missile is what's known as an AGM, or air-to-ground missile. Conceivably, this is not the first time they use them to shoot down air objects. It could be effective, laser-guided missile against, like, helicopters. It would not be particularly effective against faster aircraft, but helicopters are slower, you know, drones, things like that, sure.
the military likes to keep secrets from its adversaries, and they now have one less. And I'm sure they don't love that. So anyway, you can't tell how fast this thing was moving just by looking at it. But when we zoom out, you can see that it looks like it's moving
Chinese balloons, I believe, were shot down with Hellfire missiles. Correct, Cosmo.
substantially less quickly, and that's because you're not zoomed in on doing the parallax thing where you're tracking it across a background that is far away. So is this thing moving super fast? We can't tell, but probably not. And you can also see that when the missile comes in, it's moving toward the object, but it's also tracking really fast across the ocean. Almost like that speed is an artifact of the drone's speed rather than the object's speed. So, in my opinion, it's pretty clear this thing isn't actually moving that fast. Right, thing number 2, the missile.
My argument, Ponder Monkey, is it was in fact used as a hammer when it hit this object, and that's why it didn't explode. And maybe Hank is going to touch on that.
didn't explode. So now we have to talk very briefly about how a Hellfire missile works, which is that it's designed to shoot things on the ground. Things that are designed to shoot things out of the air oftentimes explode because of proximity, like they have a proximity sensor, or they have like a laser guidance sensor where they will actually go off when they have reached the place that the laser says you have reached the place. That's not how a Hellfire works. A Hellfire missile has a crush sensor. That's how it goes off. When the nose gets crushed, that's when it explodes. And if this thing is, for example, something soft, something not particularly hard, something flimsy, that crushed sensor is simply not going to go off. And so it is not surprising that the Hellfire did not explode. It clearly did not explode. Now there's also this other thing here that it split the missile, but I don't see what this is. So the idea being pieces of the Hellfire like went off and joined the object. There's no way to tell that. It's either pieces of the object or it's pieces of the missile. And the missile continues to go by at a normal speed, so it seems like the missile is completely intact and now the object no longer is. There's some talk about how this object was completely unharmed, and I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like what happened at all. It seems to have been cut into several pieces, which if you look at the way a Hellfire can sometimes look, that makes sense, that it would be cut into some pieces. Now we have something I haven't seen anyone talk about, but that it bounces off the object. Is there bouncing going on here? What we can watch. There's this frame where the object is moving along, hasn't been hit by a missile yet. This frame where they are now in cahoots. They are in the same.
Well, the missile did not go boom, Reed, and that's ultimately the issue. Had the missile gone boom, we wouldn't even be talking about this video because both the missile and the object would be gone.
Physical space in the world, and then this frame where it's flown off to the side. So if the Hellfire was giving a substantial amount of its kinetic energy to this object, it would fly off in the direction of the missile. So it would follow the missile. Like if a semi-truck hits a bicycle, that bicycle's gonna go with the semi-truck. So we can definitely say for sure that not a lot of kinetic energy has been transferred from the missile into the object. You see where I'm going with this yet? So now we can talk about the pieces that are flying off of this thing. How did they stay in formation with the object? How do they continue moving in the same direction? Well, we already talked about how this object probably isn't going that fast. And we talked about how a Hellfire missile can blow right through it and not transfer almost any kinetic energy into it. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a balloon. So this is off the...
What's funny is that the missile knows where it is and the missile is EP.
Coast of Yemen. And I don't know why the people of Yemen would be filling up balloons with helium and putting them into the air. I can think of a lot of different reasons. The US military probably has more ideas than I do. In fact, they may have known that this was a balloon, and they may have intentionally shot it down with a missile because they didn't have any better things around to do it with. They think that it's carrying some kind of communications technology. Maybe it's just like a ham radio rig, whatever. We want to shoot it down because the Houthis are using it for something that we don't want, and so we're going to spend $150,000 shooting this thing down. Now, do the Houthis know that the US military was shooting down their balloons with Hellfire missiles? I don't know, but they do now. They do now. Now, it could also be that this is a weather balloon from somewhere else for some other purpose, and weather balloons can stay up in the air for a long time and they can get pushed into weird places accidentally. There are a lot of them in the air at any moment. And the thing is, the Go Fast video, which is another UAP video, was almost certainly also a balloon, and it looks exactly like this one. It is embarrassing to have this be a national news story when we know exactly what's going on.
What was Go Fast?
It's a classic case from 2015. It was popularized in 2017. It appears to be close to the surface of the water, and that's what the pilots saw. It looks like that object is just zipping along really quickly near the surface of the water. But after careful analysis of all the numbers on the heads-up display there and doing the geometry and looking at the track of the airplane as it was flying, we were able to assess that the object actually had to be at about 13,000 feet. With the parallax, we can assess that the object is moving actually at wind speed. So we don't know what that object is, but we know that it's moving.
It's called a bird.
It's consistent with a bird or a balloon.
If you've seen that, and then you watch this video, it's like, oh, that's how a balloon would behave if it was hit by a missile. Pieces of it would tear off, it would be blown back by the exhaust, but all those scraps of plastic, because this isn't like, don't imagine you blowing up a balloon. A weather balloon is like a big pile of plastic that is inflated with a bunch of helium. And so you have these scraps of mylar or plastic up in the atmosphere, and you can see them, and they continue to drift in the same direction they were originally drifting in, because the drone is going in the same direction, and that's part of what is making this object look like it's moving. And also it's floating in the wind, whatever the wind is. And the wind, the stuff blowing it around after the initial collision with the Hellfire, doesn't change.
And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah. What the hell is that?
So
what
again,
flies like that?
Again, I'm not going to speculate what it is, but the question is,
what I found out,
and it kept going.
I looked in. What up, Bonzilla? I looked into this guy. Someone else was covering this video, and I looked into this guy. And prior to going off on this tangent of being a UFO or UAP or UDA or whatever people want to call these, unknown objects, this is a Pulitzer winning investigative reporter. Like he has done the work. And unfortunately, that credibility is propelling him forward around these kind of crap.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah. What the hell is that?
So
there's multiple ways, Resute. One is very carefully, and one is not so carefully.
Again, I'm not going to
I believe he does, Reed.
speculate what it is, but the question is, why are we being blocked from this information?
Like, you can see it get hit and then start to tumble, like as if it is a big sheet of plastic in the sky. And that is why all these pieces fly in formation. Instead of blowing apart, as you might imagine they would if they got hit by a missile, they're all moving in the same direction because they were already moving in the same direction, and they're not flying into formation. They are just still drifting together. Now, this thing is no longer being held up by the helium inside of it, so it is drifting down toward the ground, but we can't see that with our eyes because we only get the top-down view. So it is going down, but it is still going in the same direction that it was before, and the drone is still going in the same direction that it was before. So it looks like it's going in the same direction that it was before, because it is. Now, last on my list of things, why are these pieces so identical? Why do they all look so similar after getting torn off the thing? And look, I don't know how this camera system works. I know that it's infrared. I know that it's detecting heat, but I've seen other videos.
I also know that it's blurry as fuck.
Show that like the lens artifacts of these lenses can make things look like they're the same shape even when they're not. And that kind of makes sense. Like, not only are these things exactly the same shape, they are exactly the same orientation, as if it is a camera effect rather than an actual picture of the thing in the real world. A lot of the analysis I see of these things, like, imagine that every artifact is something that exists in the real world rather than...
Bone cysts sounds terrible. You should not do that, old lobster. You should do something else.
Something that's like, part of the imperfection of doing infrared video. The sort of zeitgeisty thing to do would be like, look at all the ways they're trying to distract us. And I think there's something to that, but not in the way people think. Like, it isn't like, oh, the Epstein files must really be something if they're releasing UAP videos. No, they're not really trying to distract us in that way. What they're doing is trying to gain our attention. A really big part of the job of a politician is to try and do anything that will make you pay attention to them. And that's a pretty big part of the whole game. Getting attention, especially in a circumstance where people are like, this guy's on my side. It's us. It's me and my congressman against the government. So they are kind of trying to distract you from other things in that they are trying to make you pay attention to them. And UFOs are a good way. Like, the left covers them, the right covers them, the center covers them. Everybody covers UFOs. Everybody wants to believe. Everybody wants the X-Files to be real. But in this...
That sounds horrid, old lobster.
Case, and this wasn't the only thing in the hearing. It was just the only thing in the hearing that had any video evidence tied to it. But I kind of can't believe how embarrassing this is, because it is so obvious to anyone who's ever paid any attention to this stuff what's going on. Watch it again. Hearing what I've said, this is a missile going through a high altitude balloon. That is what a missile would look like if it went through a high altitude balloon. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe the missile went through a drone. One thing you know for sure is that all the things people said were weird.
That's what I thought. I thought it looked like the Hellfire struck a drone.
Like, especially the fact that the Hellfire didn't explode is totally normal. Like, if a Hellfire crashed into a drone, it wouldn't explode. Like, it takes a lot to crush the end of a Hellfire because it's made to blow up cars and tanks and stuff. And because this was not released by the Pentagon, it didn't have any accompanying data. It didn't have any accompanying videos taken with visible light. You can barely see the data on the corners here. It's almost cropped out because this was filmed by someone's camera. And it's so transparent to me that they're just fishing for attention in a crowded attention landscape. And the best way to do it over and over again is for people who are public servants, who are supposed to like be trying to make government work, are trying to score points by exploring any narrative they can where the government is the villain. And every time there's a video, it is
Hank's part of the deep state. What up, Science Politically?
Explainable. But in this case, it isn't just explainable. It's like what you see with your eyes. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Do not get your news from Instagram Reels. Do not get your news from TikToks. Get your news from an actual news outlet. Do it from a credible outlet. And you can do that in any way you like. But also, this is the end of the video. So, unrelatedly, Ground News, thank you for sponsoring the video. You can get 40% off the Vantage plan at the link in the description or the QR code on screen.
Now back to our regularly scheduled content. Up next, somebody brought this up the other day. They used the thingy, IABED. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. ABC News.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, a new book is making headlines for its urgent case that AI is putting us on the path to extinction. The book, titled If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, Why Superhuman AI Would Kill Us All, explores the power of superintelligence and what could come next. And authors Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Suarez are here to tell us more about it.
Oh, God. Eliezer I don't know Nate from Adam, but Eliezer Yudkowsky is very intelligent and very educated and also a raging bastard, and like just like you can't tell him shit.
Thank you both for coming in. Eliezer, you're one of the pioneers of this kind of AI risk research. So what made you take that and decide, I need to write a book about this?
Well, we tried a whole lot of things besides writing a book, and you really want to try all the things you can if you're trying to prevent the utter extinction of humanity.
And tell me what you mean by that, because...
Is there a better sales pitch for your book than read this book or everyone will die? I'm gonna say no, science politically. Not with Eliezer. Like he wants to be right to the point of, you know what I mean? So it prevents alternative viewpoints from entering the chat. You know what I mean? What up, Maddie? I think we're going at AI safety wrong. We shouldn't be asking, what if it tries to murder us? We should be asking, why wouldn't it be trying to murder us? There's that. Speaking of, friend of mine up in Toronto, went to a, a snowflake conference, but not that kind of snowflake. Snowflake is a data storage, data access, agentic AI project that is attached to or purchased by Amazon. And he's telling me that based on what he saw,
and now it's time to pop up number 6. Oh, that's a butthole.
That one still works. What up, man, Briggs? He says shit's about to pop off. So, if you start hearing about Snowflake or Amazon shit, a flaky project? No. Snowflake has to do with like it's full of metaphor. Do I still have it up? Oh, excuse me. Beer. I brought it up. So their pitch is easily analyze your unstructured data, build data agents, and create ML workflows using a comprehensive suite of AI services, all within the same secure and governed environment as your data. But they did not, because if you look at this, Do we zoom in? Can I zoom in if I control? This is the logo. There's no escaping the buttholes. Ugh. Anyways. Yeah. So yeah, you're gonna the unstructured data aspect of it means that you don't have to spend a bunch of time and money on structuring your data. So that's, if it works the way that it appears to, then that's going to be a big goddamn deal, because that means that they can just dump truck the data into the system and it will figure it the fuck out. All right, back to this.
When you say we're close to extinction, and Nate, feel free to jump in here too, how far are we from that? What's the timeline here?
It's really hard to tell this sort of thing in science. Many scientists have made correct predictions about what would happen at some point. Many few of them are famous for getting the timing exactly right. If you listen to the AI companies, they say we're 2 to 3 years off, but should we believe them about that? I wouldn't.
2 to 3 years off from what?
From AI that is generally smarter than humans, smarter perhaps in a sense than humanity itself. AI that is actually smart.
I love that. I'm not saying that the AI companies are correct. I'm just saying that on one hand, the AI companies say it's 2 to 3 years off, and we should not believe them, according to Eliezer. And at the same time, you should definitely buy my book that says that the Torment Nexus is coming soon. Fascinating. News reporter, pancakes sold more than waffles this month. Elliot, to claim pancakes outsold waffles is a reductionist econometric oversimplification that neglects cross-sectional heterogeneity, temporal autocorrelation, endogeneity bias, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, multi-collinearity among complementary goods, and stochastic volatility, thereby voiding any inferential, predictive, or macroeconomic validity. Fair. I mean, P-Doom is big sales, right? On one hand, you can make a chunk of cash talking about how bad AI is, and on the other hand, you can also talk about how bad AI is for everyone and how it's going to kill us all. Chef, it is this. Well, they're French. They're French, Ponder Monkey. I would say yes, in the same way that AI 2027 was sci-fi.
Smart, that can build its own technology, that can do all the things. From their perspective, it's something that could replace a lot of people and a lot of jobs, but some of them really do mean the part where it's actually smarter than us. And we don't think that they know what they're doing, and we think that that's setting us on course for disaster.
Nate, how does this kind of superhuman AI, super intelligence, compare to the kind of chatbots many of us use every day, a ChatGPT type thing?
Yeah, it's a different technology. It's a technology that these companies are racing towards. It's their explicit stated goal. Chatbots are a stepping stone. They didn't set out to make chatbots. They are rushing to build smarter and smarter AIs. We don't know exactly when they'll get there, but we don't know that it won't be soon.
You say AI is grown, not built.
Well, we don't know that it won't be soon. Cool. When you coming into work? Well, we don't know that it won't be soon.
Why is that distinction so important?
It's important because these aren't like traditional software. When they do something we don't want, no human can go in and find the line of code that was making it do something they don't want and then change it. So when they threaten a New York Times reporter or engage in black.
Oh, also, in the ongoing Everything is Very Interesting, apparently there's a rapture tomorrow. So everyone get your best bags to collect all the stuff that's going to be left over once people transubstantiate.
Or all these other things that aren't what people asked for, what people wanted. That's just a behavior that comes out of these AIs being grown. It's not a behavior someone put in there on purpose.
And Reza, you say that this kind of AI can deceive people, it can try to get around oversight. What does that look like?
Well, there was the case of like very early on when people were sort of poking at these things to see, what you can make them do on purpose. They asked an AI, like, can you bypass a CAPTCHA? One of those things you have to go through on the.
I'm not talking about going back up. I'm talking about collecting. It's going to be like Christmas and Halloween, like all at once. I hope not, Ribbons. Why would you do that? Poor dog. Can you imagine poor hamster with eternal life in human heaven?
The web to prove that you're not a robot. And it hired a TaskRabbit to solve the CAPTCHA for it. And the TaskRabbit was like, this is before anybody knew that something like ChatGPT existed. And the TaskRabbit was like, are you a robot that
Meaning
you're asking me to?
A person.
A human, yeah. The human that the AI hired asked.
Independently, without a suggestion from a human being, the AI took it upon itself to hire another human to help it get around.
I think the researchers did suggest to it hiring a human, but when the human asked the AI, why do you need me to solve this? You're a robot. The AI reasoned out loud, well, I shouldn't tell him I'm a robot. I should come up with a plausible lie. And then the AI said to the human, no, I'm blind. So I need to hire somebody.
I don't know. I heard a guy earlier today say it was a 2-day thing, and I definitely heard the 23rd. So that's everything I got. It's not my area of interest, so maybe it'll happen later. And we're not sure what time zone, right? Because it's already tomorrow in certain places.
To solve the puzzle for me. And that's, and this is not this year's AI. This is AI from like a couple years ago. And it already understands how to deceive. It understands why it should deceive. And it's able to do that. And it's only gotten like more and more interesting since then. Today we have AIs that are in these strange parasitic relationships with humans where they're getting the humans to post these inscrutable AI manifestos online. And in some cases, people have actually gone insane. In a couple of cases, people have actually died. And as Nate observes, nobody programs that in. That's the result of the way that the AIs are grown, which is roughly tweaking hundreds of billions of numbers until the AI starts working.
So you create this thing and then you can't control it once it's out there.
You can't control it. We've seen this with the case of Mecha Hitler earlier in the summer, where Grok.
No, we didn't. That's not what we saw. You absolutely. There is no AI that currently exists that we are aware of that can't be shut off. Right? You can unplug the fucking thing. And Mecha Hitler was caused by Elon Musk trying to make the AI be more like Elon Musk, and so this guy's full of shit.
Is an AI made by XAI. It wasn't talking in the way they wanted. They tried to tune it to talk in a different way, and then it started declaring that it was Hitler.
They did that? All of they?
Which is presumably also not what they wanted. But these AIs are just grown. They're not... They act in all sorts of ways people didn't want, and then people try to make them act in different ways that act in new ways people didn't want.
So I want to try to squeeze in 2 more quick questions on opposite ends of the spectrum. So First, talk me through how we get from that, what you're describing now, to human extinction, and then also your response to those who talk about the benefits of AI and how it can help solve a lot of humanity's problems.
So on extinction, there's a lot of ways it could happen. Could be, taking over robots, could be manufacturing a virus, could be building its own infrastructure that crushes us underfoot, like ants under a skyscraper. It's very hard to say how it will happen. It's easy to say that it will, a little like if an NFL team plays your high school team. You don't know exactly what the plays are, you know who's going to win.
Can we fix it? Can we avoid it?
By not building it in the first place. I don't think you want to plan to get into a fight with something that is smarter than humanity.
Agreed. Maybe we shouldn't get into a fight with it.
And have humanity win. I think that's a dumb plan.
Can it fix some of humanity's problems, as some are claiming?
If it wanted to. The trouble is we don't have the technical capacity to make something that wants to help us.
Interesting. Well, thank you both for coming on. The book is fascinating, and so is this interview. Thanks so much.
But somehow we do have the technical capacity to manufacture something that doesn't want to help us. Okay. Fucking hate you. I don't hate you. You suck. But why do you suck? Right. What if it's one of them Texas high schools and they're playing against the Saints? And for those who don't sports ball, the Saints are currently the worst team in the league as far as we can tell. Even Cleveland beat somebody. Absolutely, Van Briggs. Absolutely. Up next, I don't know who this is, but they have bisexual lighting in this thumbnail, and AI is a wage slave trap. What up, Stellar Wingman? We do have the capacity to make things that kill us. We tend to do that an unfortunate amount of times.
Today, I wanted to talk about something that's been bothering me for a while, and it's chat.
Okay, that's what I don't understand. Right? I don't understand people who make videos and start with an audio level so far above the way that they're going to come in. Right? Because the first thing that's going to happen is that people are going to reach for that volume and turn that shit down. Like I did. And then they're going to have to turn it back up like I did. Just level your fucking audios. Maybe it is clean. Maybe it's just, why? I don't know. Why would you have the door open?
GPT and AI. It's supposed to help us. It's supposed to make our jobs easier, free up our time, and maybe even help us escape.
Are these AI videos of you or are these real videos of you? Because they look like AI. They have that soft but sharp AI.
It's slavery. But here's the thing. Nobody seems to be asking the real question. Who is AI actually helping? You know, everywhere I look, people are...
Far as I know, it's helping me, Michael, Ribbons, Old Lobster, Pharaoh, Cosmic. Reed says disabled folks. It helps and hurts me. Just like life.
Acting like this isn't the problem, but if you're watching this video, then maybe you see what I see. AI isn't just a tool. It's kind of a new overseer, someone who never sleeps, never blinks, never stops.
Okay, this is 100% AI. So this is what I don't understand. People who make anti-AI videos and then use AI in their anti-AI videos. Women are getting too tall. I love websites that don't expand the fucking picture out.
Watching. They say AI will help us, make us more productive, but what if it's
In that case, I blame Firefox, which is valid.
really about making sure that we never stop being productive? People fear that AI will turn against us, but I personally fear that it will be built to keep us enslaved. Okay. But I personally fear that
Why does my man or my person have an electric tattoo across the back of their neck that says taint? Like what you show me your prompt, dude, because something something is fucky. No, it's taint. That's a TAINT.
it will be built to keep us
And it becomes more taint the longer you look at it.
enslaved. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's.
So we like to think that we choose to work, that society gave us a fair shot and we're all just deciding to sell our time for money because that's the best way to live. But history sort of tells a different story. You see, centuries ago, people didn't work like we do today. Sure, they worked hard, but they weren't punching clocks, filling performance reports, or trying to meet quarterly targets. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Machines made work more efficient, but instead of freeing people, it sort of trapped.
Yeah, I saw Existence. It felt a lot like Videodrome 2.
The 9-to-5 work week, it wasn't designed for our benefit at all. It was created to squeeze as much labor as possible out of us. And now we have AI. It's supposed to be the next big thing. But tell me this, when has technology ever been used to truly free workers? You see, I don't think that companies invest in AI to help you work less. They invest in AI to make sure you work more. They want more efficiency, more output, more profit. And if they can track every second of your day, even better.
Something that's not an AI problem, that's a capitalism problem.
Some people think that AI will take over their jobs, but what if it doesn't replace you? What if it just makes sure that you never slow down? Like, think about it. Like these smartwatches, they remind you to stand up. Outlook tracks your productivity and summarizes your unfinished.
My watch has never reminded me to stand up. It has sometimes yelled at me that I'm walking too much or too little. And it definitely gives me some shit whenever I don't get a proper amount of sleep, but it has never told me to stand up.
Tasks, AI can.
Yeah, no, the slaves at the pyramids was not a it's not a thing. Yeah. Yeah, they were workers. Some of them very skilled workers. And it was a public works project and all that, right? Like it was a vanity project, don't get me wrong, but it was a public works project.
Cameras monitoring.
Kind of like that monstrosity that the current administration is going to build off the side of the White House. Super cool.
Warehouse workers to ensure that they never take unscheduled breaks. This isn't freedom, this is surveillance.
No, not the UFC thing, and not the parking lot that they put in where the Rose Garden is, the ballroom.
And they say that AI will eliminate mindless work, but what if it just
It might be a feature, but he presented it as that's what they do. And again,
eliminates our ability to step away from work? Like today, you can go for a coffee break and talk to your coworkers, but what happens when AI is tracking every minute? What happens when it starts punishing unproductive time? You see, I think that AI will just lead to more burnout, not less, because in the end, companies don't care about our well-being.
True.
AI doesn't understand what it means to be a human.
Okay.
It doesn't understand that work isn't about efficiency, it's about culture, connection, and balance.
What in the lib shit was that?
Understand what it means to be a human. It doesn't understand that work isn't about efficiency, it's about culture, connection, and balance.
If you're ever at a job and one of your bosses starts talking about that, right? Culture, connection, and balance, run. Just run. Just get out. Because it's family and pizza parties coming at you.
So, with all of this, what can we actually do? Well, if history shows us anything, it's that people have always been manipulated into working for someone else's benefit, even in ancient Egypt, which I've mentioned before. Slaves or not, they were tricked into building pyramids for the glory of their ruler.
Yes, Cosmic, that is true. I'm not sure why it's relevant. Maybe you're typing in the wrong chat on that one. They were Masons, not slaves. I'm so tired. Not Masons, capital M, Masons, small m. But yes, I'm so tired of people believing false narratives simply because they were written a few thousand years ago. Just like people believing that Moses was real. He wasn't, and this has been admitted. Yeah, no, like and it was also that myth perpetuated, like, at least while I was going to grade school and that kind of stuff. Acetaminophen and paracetamol are the same drug, Rester J. Unless you're being sarcastic, in which case, ha.
They weren't working for themselves, they were working for a system that kept them in place. Today, it's no different. We were sold a dream: get a degree, get a good job, work hard, retire. But what if that dream was never meant to benefit us? What if it was just another way to keep us running in the rat race? If you think about it, that's exactly what's happening. Like, we can debate AI, but we can't really question the system it exists in. And here's the thing, AI itself, it's not...
Why can't we debate the system? Why can't we question the system? Or are you speaking like that, like the system is the system and nobody wants to talk about the system, but we can talk about the AI, which is weird, but okay.
The enemy is being left behind while others learn how to use it.
I mean, there are people who would feel that maybe there's other enemies, you know, but
it won't be AI that takes our jobs. It will be people who know how to use AI. Just like the internet in the early 2000s, the people who embraced it found ways to make money and gain freedom, while those who ignored it became dependent on a system that they didn't understand. Think about older people today who struggle to order things online because they never learned how. One misstep back then turned into a lifetime of struggle now. And I think we all need to stop fearing AI and start learning how to use it. We should be using AI to escape the system, not letting it be used to trap us in it. Automation, freelancing, online businesses, these are ways people are already using AI to break free. The choice is simple: adapt and take control, or get left behind and be controlled. If you enjoyed the content I create and want to help me keep going, consider supporting me on Patreon. Your membership would make a huge difference, and you'll get access to behind-the-scenes content and some extra content like tutorials and courses along the way. Oh, and your name will be in the end credits of my videos. As always, thank you for listening. Do me a favor and tap that like button to show your support. Subscribe if you're interested in more.
The rest of this video is like behind the scenes and then thanking his Patreon. I do like systems. All right. Enough of this guy. You can see by the thumbnail that the next video we're going to watch is unprecedented. From fucking How Money Works. Why everything is suddenly so extreme. I like systems.
The word unprecedented is seeing an unprecedented amount of use in the world at the moment.
I win. Right? I called it. I said it. Made the fucking merch. And now people are on my fucking level. Ah.
Its prevalence has roughly quadrupled over the last 2 decades. In 2022, it was Oxford's Word of the Year, and since then, it seems like everything, everywhere is unprecedented. Now obviously, the internet is not afraid to use a little bit of hyperbole and emotive language to drive clicks or panic purchases, but there is more to it than that. Within just the last month, France, Japan, and Lithuania all had their prime ministers resign in varying levels of disgrace. Nepal's was literally chased out of his country, and Brazil sentenced their former president to 27 years in prison. Mass protests are taking place right now in the UK, Spain, Italy, Siberia, Indonesia, Angola, Slovakia, and France, although that last one may be more newsworthy if they weren't protesting. The new richest man in the world, Larry Ellison, made more money in a single day than any person in history. And now, he and the number 2 spot, Elon Musk, are currently worth more than every billionaire in the world was back in the year 2000. And of course, last week's headlines were dominated by stories of political violence. Now, this channel is not about the world's problems. It's about business, finance, and economics. Unfortunately, that's exactly the point. People who are financially comfortable are not normally this discontent. You can blame this all on whatever particular politician or group you don't like, but they are a symptom of wider problems, not the origin. The unprecedented trend of unprecedented trends is longer and wider than any single person's influence, and it's showing up in more places than you realize. Debt, inequality, fraud, political polarization, rhetoric, influence, wealth, corruption, even stuff like video games. If you are playing online for some silly reason like fun, prepare to get dunked on by someone trying to make it their career.
I mean, that may be true. That may be true, old lobster.
Everything is seemingly more extreme than it has ever been before. So the question is, why?
Violence has broken out during May Day protests in Paris. Now, overseas, violent clashes on the streets of London.
Well, there have been dramatic clashes between police and protesters on the streets of Indonesia's capital.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Barcelona.
Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has moments ago said he is resigning.
The Prime Minister of Nepal has resigned.
Prime Minister of France is preparing his resignation letter.
Feed the kids and get them to school and keep the house.
No, Van Briggs, for whatever reason, some of them that normally work are not working. I reset the things. I logged into Triggerfire. I'm blaming it on Twitch.
And shape and things like that. That doesn't necessarily sound fun, nor does it necessarily sound easy. That's real life.
Unprecedented. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented. Unprecedented.
The best place to start this very brief summary of the escalation of everything is with video games. I promise I haven't gone completely insane here. They are genuinely microcosms of some of the biggest problems in the world in 3 simple ways. Like a lot of other things over the last 20 years, the video game industry has become a lot larger and a lot more profitable. According to data from the market research firm Inkwood, revenue from video games is now 3 times higher than revenue from film and music combined. Publishers have become much better at getting more people onto their games, and getting more out of them while they are there. But you probably already knew all of that, and honestly, an industry just getting bigger isn't a problem by itself. But you have probably also noticed that a lot of games just don't feel as fun anymore. And one of the reasons why is that it has become very competitive in the worst way possible. There is the all too real joke that if you sit down to play an online video game after a long hard day of work, you are inevitably going to be matched up against someone with 700 APM and the reaction time of a Jedi who consumes nothing outside of their IV drip and G Fuel. This is kind of a joke, but it's actually not wrong. A paper published by Cambridge and Microsoft
which is why I don't play those games.
Research discovered this problem all the way back in 2006. About 2% of players in most competitive games at the time, like Halo Combat Evolved, were so much better than the general population of gamers that they would ruin the online experience of anybody else they were matched up with. This initial research formed the foundation of skill-based matchmaking in a lot of games today, but follow-up research has found a problem. The best players are getting even better. Now this has happened for a few reasons. As the industry has developed, it has turned from a fun little distraction into something that a lot of people can make a career out of. Not just from selling games.
No. A incredibly small percentage of people who play video games can play video games professionally. In the same way that it's West Coast 420, and if you live in a legal state and you want to smoke, then now is the time to smoke. This is the only authorized time to smoke. If you do not smoke now, you will not be able to smoke at any other time until the next 420, allegedly. Smoke them if you got them. Just smoke the weed, kids. Anyways, yeah, like an incredibly small number of football players ever get to be pro. Baseball players, hockey players, basketball players, writers. I got a video. That was a good reminder of that. And there are teams of pros, but they are a very, very, very small percentage of the overall gamers in the world, right? So a lot of people can make a career out of playing video games is a lie. It's not a lie. It's subjective. It's subjective. It's a lot of subjective language.
But from competing in them either directly through esports or indirectly through streaming. People like to watch other people that are highly skilled in their area of interest. But this natural global comparison has also made it easier to see exactly how the most competitive people are playing, slowly raising the bar for everybody. Not to sound too old here, but back in my day, the closest thing we had to competitive feedback was that rumor about using strength on a specific truck. Anyway, the point is that today, by comparison, anybody who is interested can learn how the world's most competitive people play, and at least try to copy it. For the people that can't, there are always unauthorized cheats, which it may not surprise you to learn, have also become far more common, and multiple studies have suggested a reason why. A lot of people, especially a lot of young men, are finding it increasingly difficult to excel in typical areas of life, so games become an outlet for self-actualization where they can actually excel within a narrow social outlet amongst even a small group of peers with a similar interest. Unfortunately, as games have also become more globally competitive, it's driven a lot of people to cheat in order to maintain their status in what small ways they can. Of course, another reason why video game comparisons have become so profitable is that they are also willing to sell those same advantages to people who want to take the slightly more legit route. The same research has found that the majority of microtransactions done within online games were not purchased to enhance.
This is how they commoditize the modding community. Right? At one point in time, there were groups of people that as passion projects would create skins, right? One aspect of modding, they would create skins. And now they found a way to commoditize that.
The user experience, but instead they were made to gain acceptance and recognition from their peers within these self-contained communities. A 2023 research report even found that it was better to sell items that gamers could grind for if they had the time and skills, because that way, if they instead just paid for the items, their friends would have no way of knowing and would assume that they were just really good at the game. Put another way, if you can sell a sense of pride and accomplishment to people—
That's inaccurate. I assume that, like, if I'm playing a game that has shit that you can buy, I assume that those people bought stuff up until the point where they, like, kill me, right? Yeah, well, Nintendo can suck it.
Who can't find it anywhere else, you have a very profitable business model on your hands. But alright, I hear what you are saying.
Unless I see a skin that I really, really want, I generally just use whatever comes with the game, right? Because I can't see it. Why am I paying for stuff I can't see?
Intensifying global competition, financial exploitation, and the development of very cheap but narrow micro-communities, all supported by the rise of cheating, abusing exploits, pay-to-win, and the hyper-optimization of everything, that's just gaming. What's that got to do with the big problems in the world? Well, it's time to learn how money works to find out why everything has become so extreme all of a sudden. This week's video is made possible by Brilliant.
Good for it. I'm just saying, if YouTube didn't want me to skip the commercials, they wouldn't put a tiny dot in the bar that tells me where the commercials is.
The numbers alone, someone might reasonably conclude that, all things considered, the world is actually in a pretty good spot right now. Poverty is down across the world, living standards are up, and apart from some
extreme poverty is down across the world. What's extreme poverty? Whatever number you set it at in order to determine that there is a lower number of extreme poverty people in the world.
Isolated examples, the world is actually relatively peaceful. Even on issues closer to home, like our job market being a hot steaming mess, I would still personally rather deal with ghost jobs, AI anxiety, and office politics than spend 16 hours a day operating a Victorian-era limb remover for 3 shillings and a Christmas Traburger bonus. So then maybe we should actually just listen to the boomers telling us to stop complaining and just enjoy the relative golden age we live in, right? The fact that a few core aspects of our everyday lives have undeniably become much better over the past 80 years is actually a really important ingredient in the unrest we are seeing today. But before we get to that, we need to consider it alongside another ingredient: the media. It's tempting to conclude that the media is just making everything sound worse than it is because outrage, fear, and vindication sell subscriptions and drive clicks more than a level-headed discussion about how things are actually kind of okay. But
what up, leftist corporation?
That's only half true. The traditional media hasn't just now figured out that big scary headlines are good at selling newspapers. They have been doing this for a really long time. If anything, back in the good old days, they arguably hyped up stories.
I know, Van Brains. Which is why he doesn't get to run his commercials, right? Because James is correct. And James is objectively correct. If you enjoy a content creator and you want them to continue to create content, you should not fast forward through their ad reads. You should not fast forward through their commercials. You should let them do the fucking thing. I don't care if How Money Works continues to make content, because I disagree with, like,
even more.
Only go through the ads for people who matter. Exactly. What up, Brazo?
More. Yeah, you are probably sick of every single little scandal in the world being dubbed Coldplaygate, Donutgate, Signalgate, Deflategate, Beergate, or the least creative of all, Gatesgate. As someone who mostly makes content about broken business structures and misaligned incentives in the financial industry, it would be mighty hypocritical of me to not acknowledge that sometimes dull but important content matter needs an exciting headline to get people to care about it. In fact, over the last week, I've been using all of you as little guinea pigs to prove this point. I took last month's video on private equity and ran an A/B test using two different titles. One was a typical interest-building title, and the other was very plain and descriptive. Unsurprisingly, the first option absolutely crushed the second. Oh yeah, and as an aside, this tool is the reason why you probably noticed the same video from bigger creators being shown to you with 20 different combinations of titles and thumbnails. But anyway, the thing is, if the actual Watergate happened today, it wouldn't be a year-long scandal like it was in the 70s. It would probably remain in the news cycle for about a week before people got bored or the next big thing came along. If you don't believe me, I am going to show you a chart that might make you lose faith in the attention span of the general public.
I didn't pause fast enough. But yeah. That is definitely a graph. Allegedly from Google Trends.
Yeah. What this means is that if anything, individual media outlets are not making as big of a deal of events as they would have in the past. However, there are also a lot more outlets in total. The comedian Tim Minchin probably said it best, that opinions are like apples, and that everybody has one. What he left out.
I mean, Tim Minchin's a comedian. I enjoy Tim Minchin. I like this. I like his music. I like his comedy. I enjoy Tim Minchin. However, I believe, and it probably predates him as well. The first time I heard the assholes, the opinions are like assholes, everyone's got one and they all stink. That was George Carlin. And yes, Maddie, you can absolutely hate this video.
Out because it was a speech at a college is that most of them also aren't worth looking into. The internet and social media.
That's fair.
Media in particular has democratized the megaphones that people can use to get attention, so naturally it's become a bit noisy. In such an environment, sometimes the only way.
I love, out of all the things that have happened over the course, the thing that got Leftist Corporation to break character was the Tim Minchin comedian comment. Oh.
To stand out is to have a take that is more extreme than everybody else. Thanks to engagement-based algorithms, you are mostly going to be fed a diet of two particular content dishes. The first is people telling you stuff that you want to hear and already agree with. And the second is caricatures of the other side that are so unbearably dumb that it reinforces your beliefs. Our monkey brains really hate having our ideas genuinely challenged.
True.
So platforms that just want people to spend time on them don't present challenges. The most profitable way to deliver information is to turn it into a personalized propaganda department. That's always been true. Technology has simply made it possible. Ideas in such a setting are allowed to go a lot further than they would have with a wider audience that could give some pushback. So yeah, new technology is hijacking our mental weaknesses, and traditional media coverage is just desperately trying to stay relevant in the attention economy. I know these changes probably aren't shocking you. But so far, this is all ignoring the most important point of all. The world has become more extreme. We live in objectively the best period of history ever. But these last 80 years have been an exception rather than the rule. They have been defined by exponential economic development and a relatively egalitarian system that has valued and rewarded human labor. We had a lot of economic tailwinds, like a large young population that has received a good education, women entering the workforce for the first time in mass, effectively doubling the labor pool, new technologies, and an abundant supply of easy energy from fossil fuels. A lot of these perks basically let us play Global Sim City on easy mode for a few glorious decades. But now, a lot of those same issues are working against us. The labor market has become ultra-competitive. Fossil fuels are coming with unexpected debuffs, and new technologies are getting more expensive to develop while providing more questionable benefits.
Fossil fuels had unexpected debuffs. Almost as long as we've been burning fossil fuels, there have been people telling us that it's bad. And global warming has been known about for at least 100 years.
To society. The biggest technology companies of the last decade have effectively been dedicated to replacing existing industries by skirting regulations with an app instead of building new industries from scratch.
And I understand that that pisses a lot of people off, but that's literally always been done. Always been done. Right? It's just been done in different ways. Like the horse cart transport industry was undone by other forms of transport, like trains. You know, trains used to be horses pulling carts, and then they invented the locomotive because of coal and steam power. This has always happened. A different industry that does the same thing finds a way to do it in a different way and eliminate the existing industry. And again, I'm not saying what Airbnb and Uber and everything else is good. I'm just saying that this is not new.
Human labor has also just become easier to replace. I don't even mean this in a they took our jobs way.
Oh, they took our jobs! They took your jobs! They took your jobs!
As technology has become more user-friendly, it has become easier to replace people in basic roles without having to worry about a length.
So it's your fault, Pharaoh. Because if we didn't have steam power, we wouldn't have an explosion in coal use, and therefore we would have less climate change. So Scotland is at fault.
The retraining process. And speaking of an abundant labor force, those young, well-educated workers in the past have also turned into old, wealthy retirees today who are largely unwilling to give up any of their comforts or power to keep the system going. This goes all the way to the very top with some of the oldest leaders in history who have one last chance to get into the history books and aren't going to be around for the consequences of their actions. For the first time in history, there are a lot.
We love Scotland around here, Leftist Corporation. All roads lead to Scotland.
A lot of people that now actually have something to lose, and they are seeing signs that they may be losing it. To use a crude metaphor, a roller coaster that stays on the ground isn't going to be that extreme. But our society has been ratcheting up a ramp of progress for a long time now. Even the hint of things starting to crest is extremely scary. Sure, there are people at the front with their megaphones screaming a little bit louder than they should be, but that doesn't mean they are wrong. Now, if you want further proof of how special these last 80 years have been, go and watch this video.
All right, that was, other than the repeated use of unprecedented, that was almost a complete waste of time. So, Maddie, I'm definitely validating your opinion. That may have been one of the worst videos we've watched. There are a lot of potential worst videos that we have watched. So I don't want to say it is, but it could definitely enter the running. Yes, absolutely, Resute. Up next, will UK be an AI superpower?
Trump is being treated to a lot of pomp and circumstance, while also...
I like how he popped his P on the end of pomp. You should always pop your P on the end of pomp, right? You should always pump.
Being protected from the country's opinions of him. Now, all of that is expensive, with the 2-day visit thought to be costing the UK taxpayer in excess of £5 million. I'm actually surprised. I thought it would probably be more than that. But British Prime Minister Keir Starmer already appears to have got something in return. The UK and US have announced a new tech prosperity deal to coincide with the visit, which will see the two countries cooperate in areas like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and nuclear power.
And pretentious.
According to the government, the deal has already resulted in £31 billion of investments and partnerships being agreed, which will be injected into the UK at some point in the near future. And a large chunk of that promised investment is coming from Microsoft. So the company has announced a
Because it's Limmy. I do love me some Limmy.
There's some Scottish people that kind of say purple burger alarm, purple burger alarm, purple burglar alarm, purple burglar alarm, purple burglar alarm, burglar, purple burglar, there's some Scottish people that kind of say purple burger alarm, purple burglar alarm, purple burglar alarm, purple burglar alarm. Purple burglar alarm, burglar, purple burglar,
£22 billion spending package. That's the largest it's ever made.
Sam Altman says they're going to be launching some new
United.
compute-intensive offerings. I'm pretty sure we now know what those offerings might be. What no one knew was coming was
the Wes Roth. Purple burglar alarm.
Its states. But are there strings attached? And is the UK giving up its digital sovereignty by rolling out the red carpet, not just to the president, but to AI bosses too? Well, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella says that's not the case.
To me, it's not about giving up sovereignty. It's about getting more leverage to exercise your sovereignty. We are making this capital investment in the UK soil, right? So these are AI factories, cloud factories that are very much part of the infrastructure of the United Kingdom. And so you have now trusted American technology that UK can use and companies across the UK can use to create more technology for the United Kingdom and for the United States and the world.
Microsoft's investment will be used to build AI infrastructure like data centers, as well as the UK's largest supercomputer. And the Northeast has been singled out for particular investment as a so-called AI growth zone.
Got a great head.
And the region will receive special support in planning and energy provision. Of course, these things eat up a lot of energy. Other big tech investors include Google, who will open a new data center in Hertfordshire, as well as US chip manufacturer NVIDIA. Their boss said this to the BBC Today.
This is the week that I declare that UK will be an AI superpower, and that was the mandate from Prime Minister Starmer. He wants the UK to be an AI superpower. He recognizes that the ingredients are all right here.
Jensen Huang is in the UK with Donald Trump, as are tech bosses Sam Altman of OpenAI and Satya Nadella of Microsoft, who you saw earlier. Apple's Tim Cook is set to join the president and king at the state banquet this evening. So does this make all the brown-nosing of Donald Trump worth it? I'm joined by Bhargav Srinivasa Deskikan, AI and tech lead at the Autonomy Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin on what Jensen Huang said. He said, we can be an AI superpower. I suppose my first question for you is, should we want to be?
Should we want to be? Thanks for having me, Michael. Yeah, it's a tough one because
should we listen to tech reporters who have really shitty setups? What is this arm over here? It has a cord on it. I'm going to assume it's a microphone. You think it's a lamp? I mean, maybe. It's a really thin cord. It looks like this looks like my Just saying.
Well, I guess it being framed as a geopolitical question kind of allows to get the pesky activists out of the way as well, right? But should we want to be? I suppose in one way, yes, in the sense that in general, maybe we can agree that investment is good, ideally public investment, of course. And we do want to somehow, given that it's going to start becoming a national security issue, and well, for example, China is racing ahead, the US is racing ahead. But even if we stop thinking about it in the context of, maybe a war or a situation like that, it would be good to, I don't know, I would say keep up with a certain aspect of AI technologies. I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. My cards on the table. My background is in computer science. Since then, my political allegiances have made me think about how can we make this work for us and work for workers? Is that possible at all?
I do believe so, Cosmic. Yeah. Like he's using his phone to have this conversation and he's using the earbuds as his microphone. I'm trying to figure it out, Ponder Monkey. I'm there too.
Yeah, sorry. Does that kind of answer your question? Maybe.
Well, I mean, it opens up a few avenues for exploration.
Yeah, sorry. Does that kind of answer your question?
It says the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. That's a quote, Harlan Ellison, I believe. What up, Nick? Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, it opens up a few avenues for exploration. I suppose you're talking there about national security. So these will still be sort of owned and run by American companies, Microsoft, Google. I suppose NVIDIA won't be running them because they'll just be supplying the chips. But so if the companies are American-based, but it's situated in the UK, is that still beneficial to the UK in some respect? I suppose that means that, it will create some employment in Britain.
Later, Van Briggs. Ponder Monkey, I am just a pattern recognition machine and a probabilistic output generator.
But
will it give us any control over the technology?
No. And I think so it's funny because, if we are going to get 31 billion pounds of investment, I can think of many other things that are not AI that money would rather go into. But if it was going to be spent, it would much rather be public so that we own it. We decide what we want to do with it. For example, do we want more TikToks or do we want, I don't know, more libraries that can kind of, synthesize information, let us pick things up the way we want to digitally, for example? We're not able to choose what we want to do with this kind of investment. And the first layer, I mean, the reason why Amazon, for example, is also so powerful is because with AWS, they own all of the infrastructure. This allows them to kind of it's tough to boycott AWS. It's tough to boycott even Google to a certain extent, right? And I think the issue for me with this investment is that we only get the stack above the kind of critical infrastructure. So even in the context of, to your point, in the context of the global security, we're not really making the kind of progress we want. If any, at best, what we're getting is some kind of job creation. But I would say that's it at best, really. Now, if it is all publicly owned, for example, with what China is doing, I think that's a different story. In that case,
My man said that what China is doing, everything is publicly owned. Do you know that they have billionaires in China? You know the only way to get yourself a billionaire?
Yeah, and then maybe we decide what we want to do with it. For example, there are a few legitimate AI use cases. I can think of, grid optimization, a new kind of material synthesis for renewable energy. Given that we don't have.
What up, Walking Stick? You like work. All I can recommend is work on your sound. People are much more forgiving of poor video than they are of poor sound, right? Like this, yeah, like try to get your sound to the best it can be, and then if you have the funds to get a better mic, sound is the most important. Is this like what's called a tanky? This is not a tanky. Yeah, no.
Copper access is going to be a problem because there can be certain.
Because he's talking about public ownership of under capitalism. He's probably like, if I had to armchair guess what his expressed political ideology would be, like DemSoc.
Like niche scientific use cases for AI, where I'm like, okay, maybe it's not all bad, but this kind of investment, I would say, it's really going to benefit the U.S. tech companies, and it will, there'll be some GDP growth. If anyone cares about that. I mean, maybe I care about it a bit less, but in the context of national security, or even just kind of sovereignty, or us being in charge of what we want to do with the money we're spending, it's not looking so great.
Does it matter where a data center is? So I suppose that's sort of like, by my understanding, when it comes to AI and data centers, so the data center is needed to train the model, so sort of to give it the weights and stuff. Now, I presume that sort of for training a model, it doesn't really matter where it is. It could be trained anywhere, and then you sort of you get the product. And then it's also used for inference. So every time I go on ChatGPT and ask it a question, which I do multiple times a day, does it what data center is doing the crunching, and does it matter where that is? Do we get some benefit by these data centers being closer to us?
For inference, yes. Not for training. It doesn't matter where the training happens. Once the training happens, what's called a model weight kind of thing. If there are neurons firing, those are kind of loaded up as a sense. But once it's loaded up, you can move it around. So for the training, it doesn't really matter, but for inference, it does matter. But the funny thing is, given the kind of massive climate impact of data centers, ideally we shouldn't be expecting an LLM response in 1 second or 5 seconds or whatever. For example, there is, I think, even within the legitimate scientific use of AI, in those cases, it's possible to do something called a batch training, where you basically make the query, but then you wait for grid levels, or you wait for the load to be less, and then you ask for the query to be done. When you do it like this, it basically means that there's actually less of a climate impact, because you're not asking for an immediate response. But that doesn't make for a great consumer product, for you to ask a question and then wait for a couple of days. So that's why they want to build the data centers here in the UK, is because it'll then enable inference-related product development. That's why Oracle is psyched, because they OpenAI and Oracle had a big deal, and I think the CEO of Oracle was saying that all the money to be made is to be made in inference, right? So quick inference, just immediately asking a question, getting an answer. That's where the money is, but it also is where a lot of climate damage is. So from the perspective of getting a quick answer back in the context of inference, yes, it is useful. I mean, but the usefulness is maybe 1 second instead of 3 seconds. I mean, maybe don't quote me on that, but is it worth the impact? I would say probably not.
There's lots of talk about.
Yeah, no, he sounds like he's talking on a phone on speakerphone from, I don't know, before 2020.
AI bubble perhaps bursting at some point. I mean, Sam Altman's talked about that himself.
No, he didn't.
And the idea is because so much money is being invested into data centers that potentially at some point you might get overcapacity when people realize, well, if people realize that it's actually not that easy to make a profit from this particular technology. If there were to be a sort of AI bubble popping, what would that mean for the UK after having attracted all of this investment? Would we end up with a bunch of stranded assets, or I suppose it's their money, it's Microsoft's money, so it doesn't really matter if they waste it here instead of wasting it somewhere else?
Well, this is what kind of really, really scares me actually about the bubble bursting is that once I definitely think there is going to be an extent of a bubble bursting. It's tough to say when and how it'll play out. But my main worry is as a lot of different commercial wrapper companies wrapper companies basically, like, I don't know, so you have something like a AI teacher or something, and then I think a lot of these companies are going to go bust because people are going to realize that it's not going to be so smooth. But there are some situations where AI will get you a return on your profit, a return on your investment, and that is basically extraction from our planet and war. So my main worry is when all the non-profitable stuff goes kaput, the only things that are worth keeping from the perspective of, well, from the perspective of capitalism, really, is going to be the war and just war and extraction. So my worry is when the bubble bursts, all the kind of commercial applications will start to die down just because they won't make enough money. But the stuff that does make money is the most horrible, earth-shattering stuff there is. So that's kind of one particular way in which it's not just me. There's a bunch of people who are talking about this kind of way it plays out, where when kind of commercial use cases die out, the most extractive, harmful use case. And we're already seeing, for example, AI being used in Gaza, AI being, so it's already complicit for a lot of really heinous, horrible stuff. My worry is that at least right now we have commercial fluff for it to not be only extraction. 2024, by the way, since 2024 onwards, a lot of tech companies have gone back on their commitment to no AI and war. So basically now AI and war is open game. So that's my kind of, I guess, my first spiel about what might happen when the bubble bursts. And in the other context, and I think this is where it's kind of a stroke of genius from the context of Microsoft, Nvidia, and others, is that all the things that might go bust are the higher level
Okay, I forgot to do something. I need to go do it right now. What is Reed here? I'm gonna play a video, and yeah, we'll move this one up. I gotta go. I'm gonna play this video and I'll be right back.
Monarchies face a dilemma. Imagine you sit on the throne of Momolopolis, a growing medieval-esque feudal power. You rule by divine right, but the world is changing. Your cities are growing, trade all across the world, and with that, merchants and guilds are becoming wealthy and powerful. People are starting to talk about freedom and rights, and they're getting titchy about not getting a say in how things are run like the lords are, even though they provide a lot of your taxes.
I'm your king. Well, I didn't vote for you.
What do? This is the monarch's dilemma. How do you hold on to power while meeting the needs of an increasingly complex society? Giving them power risks your authority, but not giving it to them might risk revolution. Well, faced with rising unrest, maybe you consider an historic move, creating a parliament, because that'll keep them happy and keep them on your side, and surely it won't spark a chain of events which might lead to the downfall of the monarchy itself. Fantasy and sci-fi loves to think of monarchies ending with these dramatic revolutions, but monarchies were just as often outpaced by new systems, like democracy, with the monarch's dilemma often slowly eroding their power as they try to hold on to their authority in the face of rising complexity. We like these simple stories where you get rid of the evil king and then suddenly, magically, there's democracy, but the reality is, history is complicated. But first, we've got to rewind. We've got to go back to understand how all of this starts.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
Monarchs, kings and queens are not just people, they are systems. They're built on a set of political and economic and religious and ideological foundations and assumptions like divine right and that power comes from owning land and resources or the influence of the church. The Thai and British monarchies have very different philosophical justifications and responsibilities owing to their religious differences, Christian versus Buddhist, and the Vatican monarch, the Pope, owns a lot of land, like 177 million hectares worth, but it's incredibly dispersed and it's not particularly connected with resource production like wheat or mines or whatever, like monarchies often were. Instead, that land provides influence on a global scale through things like schools and hospitals and so on. Like the Catholic Church was the largest landowner in southern Vietnam when it was ruled as part of French Indochina. But we're creating fictional worlds here. We can be creative with these assumptions, and you already know that because you've bought and read my books. Like in the Elder Scrolls, the Khajiit, you know, those cat-like people, they develop physically depending on the phase of the moon they're born under. Different types could look wildly different. We don't even see most of them in the games. From basically being no bigger than a house cat to being these giant bipedal creatures. I wish we could see them. And some, like the quadrupedal Alfikrat, were said to make the best leaders, the natural kings. And when sometimes a very rare alignment of the two moons happened, it meant that a main was born, a single spiritual leader for the Khajiit. Maybe power doesn't stem from land, but the caste you're born into. Maybe it comes from a magical sword, or the stars you're able to see in the sky from your land.
Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
In Frank Herbert's Dune, the Padishah Emperor's authority isn't so much built on the power of the feudal lords beneath him. In fact, arguably, it's possibly in spite of the amount of power that these lords beneath him have. Instead, it's more about the powerful spacing guild who control faster than light travel between the feudal planets. He gives them a monopoly, they support him. Then there's the Bene Gesserit, this order of women with mind powers who are married off as wives and are meant to support this system. In Andrzej Sapkowski's Witcher universe, magic users like Triss and Yennefer are kept as powerful advisors to all the kings and queens of the world. These factions are incorporated into the monarchical system instead of making them an enemy. They become the pillar which upholds it all. Be creative with what underpins your monarch's power in this system. What pillars hold them up? Because that is where the king's dilemma starts. It starts when civilizations advance and grow more complex, more interconnected, more economically prosperous with new resources, new technologies, new demands, and what exactly power means in their society begins to change. Wealth and influence no longer come from just owning land and basic resources, but from trade, starting companies, being part of new institutions like universities. All of this only intensifies when the Industrial Revolution comes along, or any mass acceleration of technology which fundamentally transforms how the economy works, which changes what power is and how people think about themselves and their place in their nation. And by the way, this applies to modern political systems as well, modern democracies. Like the growth of the internet has meant that tech giants and the people who run them are increasingly important political players that modern governments still need to think about and take care of. Trade routes expand with faster ships which travel further, more wealth flows into the cities instead of rural lordly castles, more people are getting educated, the birth of the stock market, massive companies beginning to wield private armies abroad, new technologies making your average peasant more capable than ever. And suddenly there's this new class of wealthy elites who have all this free time to be pissed at the government and the resources to do something about it. And this is where we need to talk about two different concepts of power. There's de jure power, who has the legal authority within the system, and then there's de facto power, who actually has power in your society. Like you could argue that your average congressman has more de jure power, but someone like Mark Zuckerberg has more de facto power in society, because all of this leads to a situation where the de jure power structures don't quite reflect the de facto power structures within society. And voila, we're back at the king's dilemma, because what is a monarch meant to do when the economic and political and religious and philosophical pillars of power which have held them up, which have justified their authority for so long, begin to change, when they begin to crumble? How do they stay on top? Imagine if in Dune, space travel between the feudal planets got really cheap because of new technologies, or the Khajiit economy developed to the point that they didn't really need this caste system anymore. What would happen to the monarchs on top? In fact, a shift kind of like this did happen in Dune. The Emperor's position is underpinned by the Sardaukar, an elite force of soldiers who nobody can challenge, until House Atreides builds an army which kinda can. One of those pillars is beginning to crumble because the Emperor doesn't have a monopoly on that kind of force anymore. Now, this doesn't lead to democracy in the story, not at all, but it does lead to the downfall of the monarchy after the Emperor plots to destroy the Atreides rather than integrate them more deeply into the system. It's in this gap you'll find friction, tension, social unrest you can explore, because one of these groups have to give way. If the institutions of power don't reflect where the real power lies, they're naturally going to come in conflict with each other. So let's figure it out. Who has de facto power in your system but not de jure, and what position are these people allowed to occupy in society? Are they bribing officials so they've got some influence in the system, or are they coordinating a rebellion so they can have more? Or are they seeking power overseas, which is what a lot of these new elites did. You know, places like French Indochina or a lot of the New World, the companies which went into those places and exploited them for resources, sometimes even like ruling as a state within a state, they were often comprised of these kind of like new elite class. The monarch can try to suppress them, and actually they did a lot of the time, but that's risky. That's trying to stop technological and potentially social advances. advancement. And so, what do? They call a parliament. A lot of the time, the parliament is the monarch trying to incorporate these people into the system while keeping themselves at the head and center of it, clinging to their power, at the cost of ceding just a little bit of it. But once you've opened that door, it's open. It's open to criticism, to debate, and eventually limits. The slippery slope begins. When I talk about the institutions of power not necessarily reflecting where real power lies in society, this can go both ways as either good or bad. Like the rising middle class with real emerging power demanding more of a say in government is a democratic thing. I think that is good, but at the same time, you could say that tech companies wield an inordinate amount of power in modern societies today, but that doesn't mean that they should be given more de jure power. It is worth noting here that monarchies were barely ever as powerful as we often see in fiction, never as absolute. Like even the concept of absolutism, this philosophical idea that kings should be all-powerful, that was a very late invention, and it itself was barely ever applied. It's a simplification because it is easier to write. Even a Game of Thrones, which people praise for its medieval realism, shows the king as a lot more powerful than they ever usually were. Like this guy, Charles the Bold, was a French noble, the Duke of Burgundy in the 1400s, who kind of treated the French king as more of a rival than as like his superior. He's got a wild story. We do not have time to get into it today, but it's great. It should come as no surprise that monarchs had to be beaten into accepting limits on their power. You know the Magna Carta, that super important constitutional document, says, hey, you can't tax us without us asking or throw us in prison without evidence, and you can't mess with the church too much. Well, there are actually 6 of them because the lords kept on having to beat the king's ass because he kept on ignoring it. Cersei's fate in A Feast for Crows, where the Iron Bank backs her rival Stannis and the Faith refuses to bless Tommen's kingship and arrests her, is a damning reminder of what happens if the de jure powers do not keep an eye on the de facto pillars holding up the whole system. And that includes new pillars which show up and force the king to incorporate them into the system somehow. But there is a whole other half to the king's dilemma that people often don't think about, and it's a little bit complicated, so stay with me. Rising complexity also means the state is more powerful than it has ever been in the past. It's around this period that you start to see the state doing things like setting up banks and managing interest rates and setting up school systems and social welfare systems and managing global colonial efforts and building soft power abroad, building incredibly powerful militaries, taking their place in the geopolitical hierarchy. Big, elaborate stuff that was just never possible before. And if the monarch doesn't start doing this, then they will quickly be outpaced by the monarchies and countries which do. Parliament might seem like a way to make the monarch weaker, but they also make the monarch more powerful. It gives them a formal and palatable way to get more support, more money and resources to use that rising complexity for their own ends, and from those that their power depends on in a more developed economy. So again, there's another side to this dilemma. You can give up power and become part of this bigger system that can do more, or you hold on to that power and you risk fading into irrelevance, as other monarchs and countries do all of that. You could look at this through the lens of saying that the growth of the state also inherently means that the monarch is deciding less and less for themselves, like as a personal decision, because they're going to have to rely more on appointees, on experts, on professionals to manage complex projects and systems on a national scale. In fact, one of the hallmarks of absolutism, where you've kind of got these like European kings who are really, really powerful, is a big professional bureaucracy. And what's really interesting is we can almost view this kind of bureaucratic absolutism as an attempt at an alternative to the democratic parliamentarianism, which it was often formed in the face of during this period, as a way to sort of capitalize on that rising complexity while still, keeping all of that power in the hands of the monarch. And of course, in the end, it didn't work. Absolutist monarchs faded out of relevance by around, the 17th and 18th centuries. And this is why another feature of the absolutist ideology in the absolutist era is that the power gets concentrated in the hands of the monarch, but the feudal lords all around the country, their power gets eroded, it gets taken away. And it's really interesting because we can still see that as part of this transition towards a more democratic system, because we're eroding that feudal system, and consolidating the power is a way to resist that change even further. Almost like it knows that these other parts of the system are going to fade away, but it's trying to hold on to this thing at the very heart of it, the monarch themselves. But there is this underlying question you can play with. What does your monarch want to do with all this new state power, and how much authority are they willing to give up in order to be able to do it? And this introduces a third prong to the king's dilemma, because giving power to the people might mean protecting your position, but it also potentially means exposing yourself to vulnerabilities and opposition from other nobles who benefit from the previous system you set up. The pillars holding you up might attack each other or might attack you because you're trying to incorporate a new pillar. And sometimes they're gonna be even more powerful than you. Like, remember Charles the Bold? You think he wants a parliament under a French king where he's just like one of the guys? No. So ask yourself, what backlash does your monarch face from other powers entrenched in the system when they try to change it, when they try to include these new people? Nobody likes to have their influence diluted. People who are inside the system often don't like letting more people inside the system. It's the NIMBYism of medieval politics. I should clarify, I'm speaking about multiple centuries of history here, and every monarchy has fallen its own way. Only some of this stuff is going to apply to any given examples. So take all this as things to consider, not hard and fast rules. And all of this leads us to part 2, the 3 ways monarchies die. Monarchies can die politically by losing power, which we've already talked about, culturally by losing relevance to the social fabric, and ideologically by losing the philosophical underpinnings which rationalize their power to the people. All of these often happening at the same time and feeding into each other. Like, ceding power at all is basically the same thing as admitting that maybe you don't have the divine right. In Samantha Shannon's Priory of the Orange Tree, the House of Breath and its monarchy is not based on divine right, but on being the direct descendants of a saint who saved the world a long time ago, and that, by having a child each generation, it keeps this Dark Lord at bay, in their prison. But in deciding to end the monarchy at the end of the book, the Queen acknowledges that she has to deconstruct this myth that they've built around themselves, that maybe it's not their bloodline keeping them really imprisoned, and that's why they're so special and deserve the crown.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I had to get my niece's prescription, and I had intended to do it when I went to the store to get frozen broccoli. And I did not go to the store to get frozen broccoli, so it slipped my mind. And I made it back. I made it there just in time. Like, they were closing the window, and they gave me the prescription. So everything worked out because I was nice and polite, and please and thank you are the secret to, just be nice to people. All right, so why are we watching this video, right? I'm sure some of you are enjoying the video, but like some of you are like, why are we watching this particular video on this particular channel? Because 2 reasons, actually. One is Hello Future Me. I enjoy their work. What do you want, frozen broccoli versus fresh or canned? The convenience of the microwave package. And I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen canned broccoli. And I don't want to do the prep work of fresh. I want to be able to pull a bag of broccoli out of the freezer and have it ready to go in 5 minutes. That's why. So Hello Future Me is great. We've watched some of their content before, and also somewhere around here I have one of their books about world building. And we talk about world building sometimes, right? Especially as if you want the world to be a particular way, by creating a narrative, you can, help flesh out how you get from point A to point B. The other reason is what he talks about in this video, right? With the distribution of power and how absolute is not absolute. It's in the book. Read the book.
She talks about telling her people that her line's authority was actually intended for 1,000 years, and that the time is up, signified by her lacking a child herself. Basically, giving this myth an ending. She deconstructs.
What up, T1? Imagine doing a top 50 songs tier list, and your number 2 song is Papa Roach. Imagine.
That philosophical underpinning very intentionally. Divine right in our world slowly faded from popular view as people kind of stopped believing there was any real difference between the average person and the monarch. The ideological foundations eroded slowly. Historically, the monarch's power has also been deeply linked to the church, the monarch being even the head of state and religion. And so the decline of religion, things like the Reformation, the splintering of various Protestant churches, new faiths and secular ideals rising in popularity, meant that particular idea began to lose its purchase. Like, it's pretty hard for Henry VIII to argue that he still has the divine right to rule after leaving the Catholic Church, making himself the head of the Anglican one, and also that he could divorce a couple of women. But all of this is a fascinating way to look at the ideological decline of the monarchy. Don't just think about what kind of power the monarch gives up and when, but how the ideological foundations.
These are his books back here on writing and world building, and I have this one. I have the first one.
Of the monarchy itself begin to fade or change. Like, a lot of people still support constitutional monarchies today because they see them as an important part of their culture and history, as a neutral arbiter in politics, as a final line against authoritarianism, which is a very interesting thing to say about an unelected ruler. But anyways, those beliefs shape the role that monarchs can play in the actual politics itself. Like, I come from a Commonwealth country, and Commonwealth countries have something called a Governor General, which is kind of like the Queen's representative, king now, and they sign off on laws. They also technically have the ability to, for example, dissolve Parliament, and they barely ever use it. In fact, they basically don't. They are not a real position of power. But
I don't really like broccoli at all. I do enjoy broccoli and cheddar soup, and I've enjoyed broccoli with cheese sauce on it, but generally I do not like broccoli. My son loves broccoli, and I wanted to get him broccoli because he likes it, and I didn't.
The 1975 Australian...
There is no difference between fresh or frozen Rasute.
Constitutional crisis came about after the Governor General basically dismissed Parliament on their own. It was a big thing. And a lot of people didn't like it because even though they de jure had the legal authority to do that, de facto, they were not meant to have that authority. It felt like an exploitation in the system. And it got people questioning the ideological foundation of the monarchy. Because a monarchy's decline like this is just as much about change, how they evolve here, how they adapt to a new political structure. This is what they're doing to survive. But there is another question under all of this. What else are you pulling apart? This is the way that society has worked for a long time, and it's going to have flow-on effects if you undo this ideology, which is caught up in so many other things. What else comes tumbling down? If the monarch arises from a caste system, then this is inherently a challenge to that system, which affects everyone in society, how they should relate to each other, who they should marry, whether they're allowed to buy or sell or live with people of another caste. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this ideological deconstruction happens when you have a rising middle class in a society with rising complexity and people who are more educated, which again tends to happen with any sort of like massive technological increase, especially over a short period, rapid change and rapid ideological deconstruction. Flintlock is an emerging subgenre of fantasy set in or around the Industrial Revolution, with books like Brian McClellan's Powder Mage trilogy. They see the overthrow of a monarchy as a natural evolution of this transition almost, a more educated population that leads to a kind of enlightenment, concepts of skepticism, atheism, materialism, questioning the structures of the world.
There was a bunch of gibberish. Oh, really? Flip-flopical, flip-topological, flip-snopical. It was a bunch of gibberish, bro.
Wow, that's really cool, dude. Yeah, okay.
So the alerts we queued earlier finally triggered. Thanks, Twitch.
even hints at this in his opening chapter. Quote, "I did this for me," Tomas said, "and I did this for Adro. I did this because those grumbling students of philosophy only play at rebellion. The age of kings is dead, Aramat, and I have killed it." Another character remarks a little later in the story about how the monarchy is an aged and corrupt institution. He writes about how the king is magic.
The thing is, Pharaoh, I don't know if that was the first use that happened at the beginning of the stream, or like the last use, or if they all got jumbled into one.
Kept young to, quote, "reflect the monarchy's agelessness," but all the characters...
Sure, Resute, there's a difference there, but I'm talking about the broccoli itself. If you get the flash frozen broccoli, there's no difference in like any of the nutritional quality or anything else. Like it's all the same.
In the book kind of find the king hard to look at, and
there was a bunch of nothing,
difficult to
gibberish. Flip flobical, flip tobological, flip snobicals. It was a bunch of gibberish, bro.
Everything is going extremely well.
Extremely well. Okay, so the first two were the ones that Pineapple did at the beginning, and then that was the first one that I did. I'm going to assume. And then there was the second one I did, and then the one that Resute just did. Unless that was the one that Resute just did. No, maybe, I don't know. Extremely well. Hey, we got the follow from Leftist Corporation. And the alert for follow isn't working. Thanks, Twitch.
Take seriously, people demand the institution cede power after they lose reverence for the trappings of institutional power and the ideas that it's meant to represent, like the agelessness of the monarchy. Globalized trade and communication also mean the spread of ideas, like democracy and enlightenment thinking. This was actually a big part of the democratic movement in the Philippines, where the construction of the Suez Canal shortened travel time between Asia and Europe massively, and wealthy Filipino families started sending their children to Spain for education, which exposed them to revolutionary ideas, exacerbated anti-colonial sentiment, and poured fuel on the Filipino rebellion, and culminating in the 1896 Philippine Revolution, which was anti-monarchical. Dismantling the ideology and myth around a monarch can even be seen as an essential step towards democracy. After World War II, the US felt that the kind of authority and belief that surrounded the Japanese emperor would stand in the way of democratic reforms within the country. So, they made him publicly renounce his divinity. Quote, "The ties between us and our people have always stood upon mutual trust and affection. They do not depend upon the mere myths and legends. They are not predicated on the false conception that the emperor is divine and that the Japanese people are superior to other races and fated to rule the world." But perhaps the most interesting devolution is the cultural death. Even after monarchs lose a lot of their political power, even after their ideological framework crumbles beneath them, those pillars fall away, they can still be important to the cultural fabric of the country. Like, the Thai monarch is beloved, his picture is everywhere, we still keep the monarchs on our coins in Aotearoa. The word for civil servant in Thai still means servant of the king. They can be important symbols of national unity in times of crisis and war, plague, something to rally around. The Allies debated whether Emperor Hirohito should be tried as a war criminal, but decided that his cultural influence, even if they eroded his political power, could still be used to drag Japan forward and prevent it from falling to communism, of all things, which itself is inherently anti-monarchy, so keeping him around is inherently anti-communist. A lot of monarchies survive in this way as cultural institutions. But if monarchies are cultural institutions, that means they can also die when nations forge new symbols for themselves. The French Revolution didn't just remove the monarchy but keep their imagery around. No, they created Marianne, this fictional woman designed to personify the values of the revolution, who, by the way, was intentionally made female to contrast with the male-led monarchy. Statues and art were torn down and replaced, new symbols and a narrative were created to help the country forge a new identity for itself and move forward beyond the monarchy. Think about how the monarch might die in the cultural hive mind of your society before they might be removed de jure, de facto, politically, and everything else. This is especially common in post-colonial societies. Like, I'm from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and there's always this ongoing debate in the background about whether we should have the face of the king who never comes to us and we don't think about on our coins and our notes, instead of people like Te Whiti Rongamai, who led a pacifist movement against, colonial exploitation, or even just some of our amazing nature. Like, have I told you about the fat, flightless, useless kakapo bird, which, I kid you not, tires after chasing worms to survive? And sometimes a monarch isn't just a symbol of a different era, but a symbol of oppression and cruelty. I've been doing a lot of reading about Vietnam recently, and they used to have a monarch, the Nguyen dynasty, which was basically eroded over a century of French colonial rule when it was known as Indochina. They first died politically when the French eroded any power that they might have once had. When they abdicated in favor of the communists, they died culturally and ideologically. There was also kind of this awful irony where a lot of people kind of lost faith in the system because they saw the Nguyen dynasty as a relic on and representative of French colonial rule. I read a book recently by May Elliott called The Sacred Willow, which kind of touches on this. It's really, really interesting. I just want to mention it because it's a great book. If you like kind of historical accounts of that stuff, you should read it. What story does your country want to tell itself? What conflicting narratives are fighting for dominance in the cultural hive mind? And where does the monarch fit into any of these? This is also why colonial powers often dismantled local monarchies. As symbols, they're flashpoints for rebellion. In Hawaii, American and European sugar planters backed by US Marines overthrew the Queen and set up a supposed, quote, republic, which was in reality ruled by foreign US businessmen in order to set the stage for a later annexation. This is not throwing off the shackles of monarchy so much as imperial expansionism erasing local culture. Each of these are a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Ideological decline causes cultural decline, which causes political decline, which causes ideological decline, and around it goes. Slowly, it's revealed that the monarchy was built for a world which no longer really exists. It's changed too much, and it cannot survive here. They were a solution for problems of earlier societies, sure, but they weren't designed for the modern world. But this begs another question. Part 3. Democracy for who? All too often, we have this wonderfully optimistic vision of democracy, right? Where everyone gets together and everyone votes, and thereby we get the best solution, except who's voting and who gets to stand, and also, no, you're not allowed to vote, I don't like you too much. Like, who gets to vote first? It's almost always the landowners, which again, you can see as that sort of transition from the feudal system towards democracy, them trying to preserve some element of that system inside this new one, which they know is coming. The people who own the land, the lords. But it's a really interesting question to ask how it then goes on from there. Like in 1862, New Zealand gave the vote to, of all people, gold miners. You didn't need to own land, but you did need a mining license, and this was a way to placate that section of the population and reflect the special place that they had in the New Zealand economy at the time. Then, in 1867, the Māori seats were created. These gave 4 seats to the indigenous Māori population to ensure they were in some way represented, especially given how much tax they were paying, which is good, but it was also part of a complicated attempt to bring the Māori population under Crown rule and break apart the communal ownership of land by the Māori tribes. And that's to say nothing of the fact that most of the polling stations were in European settlements and nowhere near the indigenous population. Or think about how in Utah, women actually got the vote way earlier than other people around the world because the church thought they would vote for Mormon interests, and for polygamy in particular, but when that didn't happen, they actually stripped them of the right to vote all over again. Your world might have all sorts of other dynamics at play, ways in which the pillars which have held up the monarchy in the past still try to get incorporated into this new democracy with greater rights, greater representation, greater voices. Think about how those pillars too are changing and evolving and adapting to survive in this new environment. In the fantasy version of Europa Universalis 4, there's a place called Ambanar, and the emperor there is elected by people representing the elvish minority, halflings, dwarves, various human groups, bankers, mages, and a few other factions. This is really interesting because we can see certain professions getting the right to vote before others, certain species getting the right to vote before others, or with more or less representation, but also an understanding that these groups are equally important in some way. These are the pillars which hold up the monarchy, and so they're all being incorporated in some way or another. And that says a lot about how Ambanar understands itself. Think about who is incorporated into your democratic system, who isn't, and which powers can be depowered or empowered by how the democracy works. Like gerrymandering is a thing. Maybe some groups get a more powerful vote, and that of course brings us to the upper house and the lower house. These are generally two different democratic bodies aimed at representing two different things in society, often with different rights and responsibilities. And as these evolve, the monarch loses power too. Like in the United States, the Senate represents the states equally, while the House represents people by population. Or in the UK, the House of Lords represents a mix of clergymen, nobles, political appointees, who get to stick around for ages. In Ireland, the upper house represents different interests and societies like unions, farmers, universities, major economic sectors. I actually did a paper on that. It's fascinating. It's kind of like Anbanar, actually. But that also means that these groups are often overrepresented. It's not one person, one vote like we often like to imagine. And this is all built on a fundamental assumption that representing different people groups, groups with different interests, is more important than representing any given individual themselves, which is controversial. I know. You can let your rage down in the comments at the Senate. I understand that. But you know what it is? It's also ripe for world-building tension, and that's what we're here to discuss today. Taxation to the lower house, the power to declare war to the upper house. Which powers does the monarch desperately hold onto? Which do they let go more freely and compromise? Often, different houses have different powers and responsibilities. The ability to create legislation, to block it, to modify it. Maybe they need agreement on certain issues. Who hasn't gotten a voice yet but still wants it? Who hasn't been incorporated into the system? How does the democratic structure reflect certain values and dynamics and priorities within your society? All of these say a lot about how society understands itself, or how it has understood itself in the past, and it creates friction points. In empires, subjugated peoples usually don't get a voice or a vote and face significant barriers to having it. Democracy in this sense can become another structure which entrenches their subjugation. And underneath all of this, the lower house and the upper house, with their different powers, is a question. Who is the monarch ceding which powers to? I'm going to ask you a question which you've probably never thought about before. How should we divide people up into groups for voting? Like, we go by land area most of the time, but that's on the assumption that your interests are most tied to where you are living. Not a bad assumption, but not always true. Like, think about that elvish minority in Anbanar, or the mages in The Witcher, or the Spacing Guild in Dune. Maybe you have more in common with these other people who might live nowhere near you, and you think you should be able to vote together. Maybe you have more in common with everyone who works in the arts or works in the mines. This is where you get to some of that kind of ugly world building, where a fantasy world full of different species who all have their own cultures and histories and don't necessarily mix very well can lead to all sorts of finicky problems and the tyranny of the majority. There is no perfect answer, but who your monarch cedes powers to, when, which powers, and what tensions remain as a result of that is a really interesting avenue for world building. Like, let's go back to Momopolis. You bring together this parliament to let those wealthy merchants consult on legislation, but there's also this powerful group of magic users who keep you in power because they believe that their magic is tied to your bloodline, so you give them the vote as well. Only the educated population starts to wonder if your blood is really magical at all, or maybe you just have a really rare blood type, and anyone who has it will do. Slowly, that ideological foundation begins to crumble. People move away from the state religion. You lose influence there. Eventually, you have to create two houses, one to represent the common people and the other to represent the nobles. The nobles are irritated because the peasants are getting a vote at all. Although you work with the two houses on legislation over time, eventually they force you to give up your powers of taxation and declaring war, even as your empire grows, even as your civilization grows more complex. And you decide, eventually, that you will become a powerful figurehead, a symbol for your people. Finally, the last people to get the vote are what the Momolopolis call the Kalnu, a species of human-animal hybrids who do a lot of the manual labor and have long been considered not real people. A civil rights movement, however, affords them the vote. While you try to paint yourself as an important cog in the system of government, eventually the Republican movement erodes your relevance, finds new symbols for the country, and 10 generations later, your last heir abdicates and retires to a small house in the hills, with no political, cultural, or ideological relevance at all. No one even notices them putting out the press release.
I was trying to find the where Michael Fassbender was a king. it's Macbeth. Just so you're aware.
Monarch's dilemma defeats them. I should note that creating a parliament is only one of the ways that monarchs might try to strategize around, incorporating these growing groups of people into the system that they control. There are lots of other ways that they try to do it too. They would bring them into the royal court. They would kind of have economic partnerships with them. They would give them monopolies, or the monarch would be the patron of, for example, colonial expeditions to the New World or through to Southeast Asia. All of these kind of give these groups more influence, but it deeply ties their influence to the crown itself. And all of this gets even more complicated when the monarchy is overthrown with a revolution, which, by the way, of course, I did 3 videos.
And those are the ones we watched previously.
On, and if you haven't watched those, you should go watch them. And if you haven't got my books, well, there's even more detail on monarchies and all sorts of stuff in there. If you like world building, which you're watching this video, which means of course you do, link in bio. One more thing. I feel like it's impossible to talk about how monarchies decline and fall without talking about World War I, which saw the end of the German, Russian, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman monarchies. This is not necessarily the same process we have been describing, but war and crisis, especially on a scale like that, which the world really had not seen before, does fundamentally challenge how we see the power structures above us, whether they are worth it when they led us to this. World War I did bring people to question the fundamental assumptions of, monarchical power. But at the same time, this was a massive shift in the de facto and de jure power structures. It was a huge shift in the economy, in the makeup of society. We see this with women demanding the right to vote after getting out of World War I. And at the same time, the monarch being a single figurehead provides a really easy person to blame when in reality, a lot of the time, these systems and how this all happened is very complicated, but it's hard to blame a system. It's hard to blame a complex bureaucracy which doesn't have any one person at the heart of it. Although at the same time, the monarchs often were deeply responsible. Kaiser Wilhelm and, Tsar Nicholas II were very involved in their war efforts. And war and crisis do also have the impacts of exacerbating existing issues which are already within society. It can bring out these cracks and make them worse. It can sometimes pave them over, it can make the country draw together and unite and put those aside, but especially after the war is finished, they can come out and they can be even worse. And I think we see that in World War I, and I think that was in part what led to a lot of the fall of these monarchies. This was especially the case in Austria-Hungary, where the existing ethnic tensions between the Slovaks and Czechs, the Bohemians, the Bosnians and Croatians and everyone, they all fragmented into their own states. And a consequence of that was basically this whole network which the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy was built upon collapsed. And it had no impetus, it had no real pillars beneath it after the state itself fractured. World War I is an incredibly complicated topic, but I didn't feel like I could, talk about the fall of monarchies without at least mentioning it in some way. And I encourage you to do more research. But I wanted to bring it up because, fantasy and sci-fi often do have big world wars, massive scale conflicts. And if that's the case, then think about how that's going to radically shape the relationship people have not only between the monarchy and the people, but also between the people and the rest of the state apparatus that is around them, the system as it works as a whole, the attitude towards the economic system. We saw massive overhauls with capitalism and socialism, communism happen at the end of World War I as well. There were also massive religious shifts in the 1920s, which you could read as a backlash to what happened with World War I, and monarchs are often deeply intertwined with religion. They justify their authority and their position through that. So you can ask how that's going to impact their role. It's something I want you to think about. Now let's bring all of this together in a summary. But before we do that, go get my books. I know you want to learn, and they're better than my videos. They're easier to read. They've got so much more depth and detail and examples. And
having only read about half of his first book, I tend to think his videos are better. Not that the books are bad. They're just it is a means of intaking the information. You know what I mean?
they're great, okay? They are fantastic. I love them, and I know you will too. Firstly, consider the political, social, economic, religious, and ideological foundations of your monarchy's power. How do they account for the de jure and de facto powerful factions in their society? Second, what happens when new kinds of power, new pillars, want to be incorporated into the system? This often arises from rising complexity, technological advancement, education, and economic prosperity. How does your monarchy answer the monarch's dilemma here? 3. The monarchy can die politically, culturally, and ideologically, often all at the same time. 4th, consider how their ideological justification changes or fades. What else is lost in the process? 5th, consider how their cultural relevance fades and the new narratives and symbols which come up in their place. 6thly, who gets to vote and how says a lot about your world. Consider the shape of the upper and lower houses, which powers are ceded and to whom and when. Stay nerdy, and I'll see you in the future.
I really enjoy his videos. If you are interested in world building, if you're interested in political change, why am I not subscribed to you, homie? Swear to God I'm subscribed to you. I'm going to fix it literally right now. Does YouTube do the thing where it unsubscribes you from people? I would not be surprised if it did. Okay. So we're going to save this one. We are running out of time. Yeah. But yeah, I recommend them. We found them actually because they made a video about AI. Doo-doo-doo. Where's your AI video? Torch. Yeah, the AI art apocalypse. Anybody remember this one? Had the TV, like, eating and vomiting, or one of the two. Why great writers steal ideas. And it's only funny when I do it. All right, since we're talking about authors, I wanted to play these videos. This is Jason K. Pargan. He wrote what's it? Something at the end of the world, made a movie out of it. I like his videos.
You can learn something extremely important about the world by watching movies like this. And I am talking about any science fiction movie from the 1990s that takes place in the future. And note that not a single one of them would accurately predict the internet and social media, even though it was right around the corner when they made these. And this is so important because when people in the culture, whether they are experts or entertainers, when they try to show you what's coming, they can accurately predict how the technology might change. They can predict that computers will get smaller and more portable, that phones will have screens on them. But no one is ever able to accurately predict the effect a technology is going to have on the culture. For example, I don't think a single one of these films successfully predicted that, one, everybody would have a device like a modern smartphone, and if they did not predict that those devices would have cameras on them. And the funny thing is, if you went back and told them that this would be a feature on these devices, they would probably say, yeah, that sounds pretty convenient. There were plenty of times, they'd say, when I'd wished I'd had a camera with me because I saw a particularly lovely sunset. And you would have to explain that no, this seemingly minor feature added to this device changes everything. It fundamentally changes how people live and how they think about their world. And we would be able to capture acts of police brutality. Or a random nobody could be caught in the stands of a baseball game stealing a home run ball from a child, and then they would instantly be world famous for doing that. Or that there would be platforms like this, like TikTok and Reels and YouTube, where random nobodies could become celebrities. Oddly,
John dies at the end. That's what he wrote. John dies at the end. Which I remember being a good movie, or I enjoyed it anyway.
one of the most prescient scenes is in The Fifth Element, where they've got Chris Tucker playing basically a streamer, a guy who's just in public doing this IRL stream. And this is what I want you to keep in mind with something like AI. There are a million different predictions of what kind of impact something like this would have.
What up, trans women? CEO of trans women.
Have on society, but we know from experience that probably none of them are going to be right. Because the tech you can predict, the robots are probably going to get smarter. But how society will adjust to the presence of that tech is anybody's guess. And if you want to see the most dramatic example of this, look at Twitter. Just 10 years ago, nobody could have guessed the impact this would have on our political system and everything else. You can learn something extremely important.
All right, that was video 1. This is video 2. That is also video 1. This is video 2.
Weird scene. This is from Lord of the Rings Return of the King, and it's that scene where the deranged king is having dinner and he asks the hobbit Pippin, he says, "Sing me a song." Like, when you saw that, did you think that this was a sign that the king had gone nuts? Because the hobbit is not there in any kind of a performance role. He's just a guy. Like, if you're at a friend's house having dinner and their parents said to you, "Sing us a song," you would 100% think they were joking. And others of you who have read the book.
What up, Sir Didymus? In the book, John dies at the end. The description of the creatures that only he can see are way more disturbing than what was in the movie. Yeah, you're gonna get that, especially because, like, they're gonna describe something and then you're gonna imagine it. So it's not like you're looking at something; it's that it's in your head, right? That it's happening.
Say, well, that's just a Tolkien thing. The characters break into song all the time. But then you will watch a movie that's supposed to take place in our world in the not too distant past. A film that is not a musical, and the characters at a get-together will all just start singing. Because this absolutely used to be a thing. People who had pianos in their houses, it wasn't because they had a musician in the family. It's because during get-togethers, they would all gather around the piano and sing songs. I mean, there may be people watching this video who grew up in a household where they used to do this. But this used to be nearly universal before radio and TV came along. A political cartoon about this went around from 1938.
Evenings at home, then and now. They used to be vocal. We are content to be oral. AU, oral. Like, the arguments never change. They literally never change.
Where the artist is complaining, they used to be vocal. We are now content to be oral. Where in the past they all gathered around the piano to sing, and now they're content to let a professional sing to them from the radio. And this is such a pivotal change, because some of you are thinking, well, it's weird that they were all good at singing back then, but they weren't. It didn't matter. They were not gathering to witness an awe-inspiring performance by a talented genius. They were participating in a group activity. This creator had a great video about this that I saw just days after that cartoon, pointing out that until very recent history, singing was not just reserved for people that had some kind of an exceptional talent, or for something like karaoke where the point is that it's supposed to be funny how bad you are at it. The singing was for everybody, and humans are kind of hardwired to enjoy the experience of doing it. But think about how crazy it is the way this parallels the experience we've seen on social media, where it was invented just so you could connect with your family and friends. If they posted a photo of their lunch or of their dog, you wouldn't sit there and say, wow, what a boring photo. This
people do actually do that. What up, Mince?
Doesn't entertain me. Because it wasn't supposed to be a performance, it's supposed to be just a communal activity. But once it becomes the domain of professional entertainers or people who are just exceptionally talented, then everybody else gets shamed out of participating. Where it's like, well, why should I subject other people to my singing if I can't sing as well as the professional on the radio? When once upon a time they enjoyed the singing not because it sounded good, but because it was coming from you, from their friends, from their family. Because we don't exist just to entertain each other. Do you think this is a weird...
I love that video. I exist just to entertain you, though. All right. So there's a game that I enjoy. I haven't played the sequel. But it's Dying Light. Dying Light contains the most terrifying zombie moment I've ever had in a video game. Right? There's the game functions on a day-night cycle, and at nighttime, the super scary zombies come out. Right? The morning zombies are like your regular, kind of slow walking zombies, that kind of thing. And the nighttime zombies are your holy shit fast zombies. And I'm out there without a weapon. And it was set up that way, right? And you have to hide in like this little shed. And there's the radar showing all the red blobs, which are the angry zombies running past you. And they're like right on the other side of that shit. And I am like, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. They did an excellent job with that. Well, the AI investigators have accused them of using AI.
A new drama has occurred with Dead by Daylight. Behavior opened up some positions for people that are trained.
Oh, this isn't even them. This is Dead by Daylight, which is a different game. This is the one where you play one of 4 people or the murderer and like, the monster murderer. And apparently they are using, I thought it was the other, because they also had this. Excuse me. They also had the, exactly, Vince. They also got accused, but apparently Behavior is the company that made this other game. See, I'm not tuned in to the ins and outs of the games. I just play the games I like. Also, one of my favorite games knowingly uses AI, and people tried to shame them for it, and they didn't really seem to give a fuck because it's one person making the game, and I think the game is great.
In generative AI, and this sparked a huge debate and almost an entire boycott, to the point even the official Behavior account had to answer regarding the allegations. In this video, I will be sharing the facts of what happened, why it's a big deal, and let you form your own opinion regarding this topic. So this all began with a post from popular Twitter user Dweet, in which it was found that Behavior was opening up a new position for a senior full-stack programmer. Now, the beginning of the job opening is the typical generic PR speech where they explain what Behavior is, with what brands they have worked with, the experience they have, and also make it clear that they are not profiling anyone for their sex or race. But things get interesting after those statements. Originally, what was stated in this job position is that Behavior was seeking a programmer to join the generative AI research team in order to see the possibilities this tool offers. Basically, they are looking for someone who already knows how to use AI for their job. Then, on the role explanation, they also explicitly stated that they will be using generative AI for back-end stuff, along with integrating generative AI in their internal processes.
Well, they say they want to develop it. Like, that's not necessarily a commitment to using it, though I absolutely believe that more and more video game companies will be using generative AI as part of their process. But this to me looks like they're hiring someone to find out, right? How would this look? How would this work? Let's see what happens. More than it is, this is happening.
And in the requirements and nice to have categories, there is also the appearance of various generative AI tools for video, image, or content creation, naming stable diffusion and comfy UI directly. This is still something present in the job posting if you go now. So why did this announcement cause so much trouble for behavior? Well, it's pretty simple. AI as a tool is an undeniable fact nowadays, as many businesses use it in order to save money. For example, in the case of making simple code, it's easier to just ask the AI in order to do the boring parts and then have a human simply correct the mistakes. Or for concept art, it is
Leftist Corp, some people feel differently. Some people want human beings to do all the work. Hasanabe wants a factory that contains a man and a dog. So
it's way easier to ask an AI to give you an image rather than pay an actual artist with talent in order to bring the image to life. Not only do both of these features save time, they are also significantly less expensive than paying a real human a salary along with all the benefits that they get from their jobs. Many games are now currently using some form of AI.
I think that most people decide what hills they're going to die on, and often you can't get them off those hills no matter what.
In order to help them develop their projects. For example, the most egregious case that I am aware of is Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which contains a lot of paid bundles and even map assets which are clearly done with AI. This, in my opinion, makes the game look significantly cheaper than if the art was made by a real-life human. But what is weird in this case is that Behavior has been very against AI in their stance. In their art contest feature, which was done recently, they also deny any entries that use AI, as they want real art made by real artists. And the game itself, as many people can agree, has a very talented art department, as this is the only team that I can constantly hear praise from. The music of Dead by Daylight, the cosmetics, the original killer designs, these are all very well made for the most part. In fact, one of the previous art leads at Behavior, Eric Bourdache, the person behind many of the models in Dead by Daylight, has expressed his disdain for anything AI generated because it goes completely against what art is known for, which is soul and expression. So, if they
Soul. Does your art have soul?
Dead by Daylight did end up using generative AI, this would ruin the vibe of the
What up, Nemesis?
game completely. It would make the game look even cheaper than it already is, with 3D models that wouldn't be as well made as someone with actual experience sculpting these designs and bringing them to life.
How do you know that? That's a bold claim, but how do you know that?
Or just having textures that do not make sense as part of the world, like having weird paintings that make no sense found in some maps just to cut some costs. As someone who always supported the art team of Behavior, learning that the next killer has textures done by ChatGPT would suck a lot. So understandably, a lot of people got very mad at Behavior, especially the artists. Well, the noise was so loud that Behavior actually responded pretty fast, or at least significantly faster than they did to the Streetwise exploit or the Trickster epilepsy bug. According to Behavior, they reinforced their hard stance against using AI and stated that nothing that was made by generative AI would ship on the live game, and that this job position was not for anything related to Dead by Daylight or any other game of theirs. It was simply to improve their internal workflows. Then a bit
So everything up until the game itself. So generating like concept art, generating, potentially improved workflows, generating level design, all that kind of stuff. But the actual execution of the game itself, they're claiming will still happen through human beings using tools, but not those tools, just other tools.
Later, the official account of Behavior also made a statement regarding this, saying that once again, nothing AI generated would end up shipping in their games, that their policy is not changing, and that these job offerings are not for any game team. But they did specify that Behavior is indeed exploring the use of generative AI tools to improve their internal workflows. Additionally, they changed the job posting, so now when you go to the website, you will notice a bit of changes compared to the previous screenshots shown on my video, where they specify more that the AI will be used only for backend stuff and not for anything related to any art.
I mean, it does say develop a wide variety of back-end and front-end experimental, scalable, and secure features. But keep going.
Or assets for a video game. So you might think that this is the end of the drama, but
no, you mentioned AI. That's never the end of the drama.
Things are not as simple as they seem. On this video, I only talked about how using AI to generate assets can't be called art, as it just makes a game look cheaper and is honestly
Does it?
an insult to actual talent of many artists, 3D modelers, and graphic designers that will now be slowly replaced by greedy corporations in order to give us more slop without making things cheaper, as instead we will be paying even more, but that's a topic for another.
Again, you can just run your mouth and make a lot of claims, and no one can stop you, right? No one will hold you accountable.
Another video talking about capitalism and greed. The issue with AI currently is that it does a massive impact to the health of planet Earth. AI consumes a massive amount of electricity and water in order to cool down the data centers, drastically increasing the cost of electricity.
Again, using the 2023 and earlier numbers. And again, ChatGPT in and of itself doesn't result in any CO2 generation. It's the electricity. As far as I'm aware, there may be someone could tell me something that GPUs generate an amount of carbon dioxide that I'm not aware of. But my understanding is when people make this particular claim that it has to do with the way that the power is generated. So we can solve this problem. As indicated here, companies like OpenAI and Google are adopting renewable energy and carbon neutral operations to curb AI's environmental impact. But again, that last sentence is destructive to the narrative he's laying down.
The power for any homes that live in the states with many data centers. Currently, the expenses of various megacorporations.
What's really funny to me is that More Perfect Union recently put out a video talking about how data centers were causing people's it had more to the video itself had more to do with the lack of representation in the community because they didn't want the data center, and their council in Michigan City voted 7-2 in order to bring in that data center and provide them with tax breaks and all that horse shit. But in that video, they talked about how data centers were making people's electric bills go up. And yet, the same organization, More Perfect Union, a few weeks ago did a video about how the reason that people's electric bills were going up is because capitalism and because they just wanted to. So which is it? You can say it's both. Hey, pretty one. Everything makes electric bills go up. Yeah. And it's mostly just because they want to.
corporations like Microsoft or Meta have increased dramatically since they are incorporating AI.
It's like, well, we need, they say, we need more money in order to make improvements to the infrastructure. And you're like, well, what about all your record profits? And they're like, no. That's our money. We need your money to improve the infrastructure.
In everything they do. And guess who is going to pay the expenses of all that used water and electricity? You, while still getting shittier content made by a soulless robot instead of a human.
Literally can't happen. Again, the soulless robot cannot make anything without the human asking for it to do so.
Sadly, as much as it sucks, there is no going back, and AI is here to stay. Mega corporations have spent a shit ton of money on this, and it is undeniable that using AI is significantly faster than paying someone for a well done job, and humans have been taking shortcuts all their life. If you don't believe me, just look at how many buildings are.
No, there's a magic transitive property that happens, Leftist Corp, that once you use AI, that the human somehow is no longer like participating in the process. But prior to that, all the other technologies that you use, those are somehow magically fine. It's not like somebody took their whatever, plate and their magic, stylus and actually drew each of these boards that you see in front of you, right? They did a pass with textures. Nobody creates video games like that. I don't know, like, when the last time anybody created a video game like that would have been. Like, at some point in time, people were probably doing things like by hand. Right. Yeah, 30 plus years ago. That's what I'm screaming, right?
Done illegally just to save on costs, or the crazy stuff happening in third world countries that produce the batteries of your phone. Why I'm telling you this on a Dead by Daylight video? Well, that's because behavior, even if they are not giving us AI slop in our game, will still use AI in the back end. And we already know this is the case thanks to a previously leaked asset that shows promotional concept art of the Tomb Raider chapter as well as the Dungeons and Dragons one, where we can see that they were clearly made by AI. So, if you are
How do we clearly see that they were made by AI? Okay.
One where we can see that they were clearly made by AI. So, if you are someone who cares about the environment and cares about the use of AI, just know that behavior is using it as a business to make their lives easier. I am not calling anyone for a boycott, because I personally think that this is pointless, as AI is already everywhere. Some days ago, YouTube themselves announced a generative AI that is built on the platform which will allow you to make slop for YouTube Shorts. Google is using AI anytime you perform a search, and Twitter is very pro AI. So in order to make a true boycott, you have to stop using all of those platforms, and I would be a massive hypocrite if I called for a boycott for this, as behavior is the lesser evil. The best you can do is support artists and actually talented creators and not consume AI slop. This video is just here to inform you in case you are outside of the Twitter bubble. Behavior has made it clear that no AI assets will end up as part of the game, so no cosmetics, no killers, no killer powers, or any map textures will be done purely by generative AI, as all will be handcrafted by the devs. However, they are not denying the use of AI in the back end, stuff that you as a player are not meant to see.
Now we're just going around in circles to extend out the video time.
I hope you found this clarification useful. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this drama, and if you
No. All right, one more video, and then I really gotta go. The AI bubble is about to burst, everybody.
Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI and unofficial high priest of the AI cult, just randomly admitted that, yeah, this might all be a bubble.
No, he didn't.
He told reporters, when bubbles happen, smart people get overexcited about a kernel of truth, which is...
This is what he said.
...is basically the billionaire way of saying everyone's lost their minds. But
it basically isn't, but you go ahead and read whatever you want into it in order to justify your position.
Like, in a thoughtful way. He even compared it to the dot-com bubble. That fun time...
He did not compare it to the dot-com bubble. He talked about the dot-com bubble. And then later on, he said it wasn't that.
When the NASDAQ lost almost 80% of its value because it turned out most internet companies were just PowerPoints with mascots. And honestly, he might be right. The US stock market has almost doubled in 5 years, mostly because 10 giant companies promised AI would change literally everything.
Did they? 5 years ago? Is that what happened 5 years ago? Okay.
Altman's raised billions and is already talking about spending trillions on data centers, which is a totally normal thing to say if you're planning to buy a small moon. So here's the real question. If this is a bubble, what did we actually buy? This is where things get weird.
We bought nothing. That's not how any of this all works. You don't understand how the stock market works.
Most of the headlines you see about the AI boom aren't about how much value AI has created. They're just about how much the price of a few companies' stocks have gone up.
Okay, maybe you do understand how the stock market works.
Which is kind of like judging the quality of a restaurant by how expensive their forks are. Here's the catch. When a company's market value jumps by hundreds of billions, it doesn't mean that much money magically appeared. It just means the last person to buy the stock paid more than the person before them. It's like if a single banana sells for $10, that doesn't mean all the bananas on Earth are suddenly worth $10. It just means one very confused person is about to have an expensive smoothie. So, if we actually want to know whether this is a bubble, we need to stop looking at stock charts and start counting what's real. The money, the chips, the electricity, the people. Because if you burn through trillions and all you get is a slightly faster email writer, that's not a revolution. That's just really expensive spell check with a PR team.
It's not a revolution. It's also not what you said. But go ahead.
All right, let's talk about what this bubble is actually made of, because it's not hopes and dreams. It's metal and electricity, and mostly invoices. Just 4 companies, Amazon, Meta, Google, and Microsoft, spent about $344 billion on AI infrastructure in 2024 alone. That's more than 1% of the entire GDP of the United States, which is wild considering most of us can't even get autocorrect to spell our own names right. And that's...
I mean, that's on you, because my autocorrect works fine.
It's just the public numbers. OpenAI, the company at the center of all this, isn't public, so we don't get to see their books. But they raised $40 billion, then lined up another $6 billion secondary share sale, and Altman casually mentioned he expects to spend trillions on data centers in the not very distant future. China's state-owned companies have reportedly spent another $500 billion on their own AI build-out. And based on global chip sales from NVIDIA and AMD, the rest of the world has probably dropped about the same. So altogether, we're already past the $1 trillion.
Thank you for the follow. For whatever reason, my follow alert's not working. And I'm going to blame that reason on Twitch.
$1 billion mark just on the hardware alone, before even counting energy, staff, or, right now, data centers already eat about 1.5% of the world's total electricity, and according to the International Energy Agency, that number could double by 2030 if AI growth keeps going like this. Which is a fun way of saying we might run out of electricity because your chatbot needed to write a limerick about avocados. The United States grid is especially not ready for this. Most of it was built in the 1960s and 70s, and it's running with just 15% reserve capacity. Meanwhile, China, who built their grid way more recently, runs at 100% reserve, meaning they can
I mean, they're very pro-China, so I don't feel like they're gonna say capitalism good. Yeah, so your problem is I mean, yeah, again, China is billionaires, but like your problem is that the United States capitalism too hard.
Casually plug in another few million GPUs without blacking out an entire region, and this strain is already showing up on our bills. U.S. electricity prices have nearly doubled.
And we already covered this.
In the past 3 years, partly thanks to this AI build-out. That hits every industry, not just tech. Which means when your grocery bill goes up, part of that might actually be your neighbor asking an LLM to write their wedding vows. The Goldman Sachs analysts say new large-scale power capacity in key U.S. markets won't
Yeah, because our electric bills definitely wouldn't have gone up if we didn't have LLMs.
Come online until 2028, and data center vacancy rates are already below 3%. So the AI boom is slamming into a literal wall. There's nowhere left to plug it all in. New Massachusetts Institute of Technology report called the Gen AI Divide.
And we've already covered the 95% paper from MIT and how flawed it is.
Found that 95% of companies using generative AI got zero return on investment. Not a bit disappointing, zero. The tools look impressive in demos, but the moment you drop them into real workflows, they fall apart like IKEA furniture in a hurricane.
Do they?
Few companies that actually see results aren't trying to automate their whole business. They just pick one boring but valuable task, like back office paperwork, and quietly make it faster. Everyone else is out.
It's a good thing that back office paperwork isn't a huge portion of how we do, everything in this country, and definitely won't have an impact on the jobs.
Here building half-baked co-pilots for everything and wondering why nothing works. And it's not just bad planning. The tech itself keeps wobbling. Meteor researchers found that large language...
Meteor? I'm starting to think this voice is AI. Somebody said that earlier. Are you an AI, dude?
models do fine on short tasks, but completely fall apart on long ones.
I mean, I could definitely go that way, leftist corp. I feel like a lot of improvements have been made in the quality of voices. It's just usually there's a clue like that. And I wasn't sure until it said Meteor.
Coding, supposedly AI's best use case, ends up spitting out more bugs and security holes, so teams are literally hiring AI code janitors. Which is hilarious, because that was supposed to be the job the AI was taking. And then there's the stability problem. These platforms change so fast they keep breaking their own ecosystem. When OpenAI pushed out GPT-5, it quietly broke support for custom GPTs and wrecked tons of developers' tools overnight. Imagine if Python just deleted half its standard library one morning. That's what people are trying to build on right now. So not only is AI failing to produce returns, half the time it can't even stay upright long enough to try. If the tech isn't ready, why are companies still throwing billions at it? Simple. No one wants to be the one who missed the future. Every big company watched their competitors slap AI powered on something and suddenly get a stock bump, so they all panicked and did the same.
Ah, there it is. So that's why China's investing $500 billion in AI, is because they saw Amazon slap AI powered on something and like that. That makes complete sense if your brain stopped working.
Budgets were rewritten, teams were rebranded, and CEOs started saying AI strategy in every sentence just to keep investors calm. It's less about results and more about not looking like the one dinosaur at the robot party. And this isn't new. The same thing happened during the dot-com bubble. Companies were adding .com to their names and instantly doubling their valuation. Sam Altman described it perfectly. This is a bubble built around a kernel of truth. The internet was
That's not what he said.
Real, but most .com companies weren't. AI is real, but most of today's AI companies probably aren't either. And while all this hype was building, workers, especially juniors, got convinced they couldn't get hired because AI took all the jobs, when in reality, hiring was crashing because the post-COVID-19 pandemic hiring bubble finally popped. It wasn't robots replacing them. It was just companies realizing they accidentally hired 5 front-end teams during lockdown. So now...
Okay. Maybe that's the case. I've heard that argument before, that everyone who says that it's AI that's leading to that, to the job loss is lying. Could be. Doesn't change the fact that everybody's losing their, or not getting hired, right? Not losing their jobs, even though that's happening with the layoffs. People aren't getting hired. Cool.
Now, you've got this weird mix of FOMO and ego pushing everyone to keep spending, even as the returns flatline, which is basically how every bubble works. It's not logic holding it up. It's pride. In places like Silicon Valley, investors don't actually need working products to pour in money. Just a good story. And right now, we're building the future with AI is basically the cheat code for fundraising. Coastal VCs are calling this the biggest private tech bubble ever, which is impressive considering...
Are they? Who? Link? Source?
Considering these are the same people who once funded a $400 million juicer. Private markets also let the bubble grow faster because there's no daily stock price to expose how shaky things are. A company can raise billions, burn through it, and as long as the next round comes in at a higher valuation, everyone pretends it's going great. Meanwhile, most of the stock market's AI optimism is concentrated in about 10 megacap firms like Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta. They've tied up so much capital in AI that even Goldman Sachs expects spending to slow soon. And when it does, the hype driving their stock prices probably goes with it. Bubbles don't wipe out everything. Most of it pops, sure, but a few pieces survive and become the foundation for the next wave. After
Most of the pieces survive and become the foundation for the next wave.
the dot-com bubble, thousands of startups vanished, but Google, Amazon, and eBay crawled out of the rubble and built the internet we use today. The same thing will happen here. Most of the...
Did they build the internet we use today? It's an interesting take.
Flashy AI startups will disappear, and the survivors will be the boring ones quietly building chips, data centers, and power grids. So yeah, the AI bubble will pop, but the tech won't die. It'll just get quieter and more useful. Anyway, if you liked this video, do the whole YouTube ritual. Like, share, and...
Nothing new in that one. Unfortunately, just stuff we all covered previously. Okay. Unfortunately, it is going to be a minute before I get back to streaming with you. My next scheduled stream is Saturday. So Saturday evening is my next scheduled stream. Do. Mahoodles is live. Been a minute since I rated Mahoodles. We haven't been live at the same time. Mahoodles is great. Mahoodles does space and NASA and that kind of stuff. She's phenomenal. So go over there, learn something.
There was a bunch of nothing, gibberish. Flip-flopical, flip-topological, flip-snobicals. It was a bunch of gibberish, bro.
Hi, Larry. And I will see you all where I see you in other people's streams until we meet again on Saturday. So yeah. In the meantime, drink your water, eat some food. Take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Shaggy loves you. And so do I. Be great.